code on this computer. So yeah, it's available online if you miss it, if anybody misses it. Let's take a moment. I'm actually going to turn the dryer off. Better, a bit more shanti descent. Just take a moment, connect with our teachers, put ourselves in the humble place of the student. We're simply trying to understand, we're trying to receive knowledge. Because we come to a place when we know our own minds that just get us into more trouble. So we're willing to give it a go, receive knowledge, downward knowledge from beyond, coming from our teachers and those of us who are bhaktas, from Ishvara ultimately, so that make those connections, put ourselves into that studentship frame of mind, we chant our invocations. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Akanda Mandala Karam Yena Vyaptam Characharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Syadvaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye. Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarvavastha Gatopi Va Ya Smaret Pundarika Ksham Sa Bhayabhyantara Shuchihi. Somebody asked me for a translation of those invocations, and there's nothing. If anybody's interested, whoever it was that asked me for them, and I emailed them back. Sorry, I forget the name. If you're listening to this, and if you want to compile that list that I sent, it was all I sort of cut and pasted it from different places. If you care to compile a list, and then next class you can post it on chat in case anyone is interested, then feel free to do that. Okay, so Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, and we're in the first wave, the eastern quadrant, and the first wave, 4 waves, and we are defining bhakti. I'm going to mute everybody, so at the end you can unmute yourselves if you want to say anything. Mute all. Mute all. Those, and we'll bring our text up. Thank you so much for spending your Fridays for us, for giving us an opportunity to spend our Friday together in the next few Fridays studying this text. That just helps us get deeper into bhakti. So we were, right at the beginning, there were 6 qualities of devotion. We did 3, we have 3 to go. We'll just quickly recap. And we had some talk about, the rejection of other kinds of liberation, including the standard jñāna liberation. Okay, he introduces the text, talks about it as an ocean. It has different quadrants within the quadrants. So that's, like the padas of Patanjali, the 4 padas. So he has 4 quadrants. He just wants to go with this metaphor of ocean. And there's a subtext to it that the bliss of bhakti, perhaps you could read it this way, is an ocean. And Rūpa Gosvāmi is going to say in this very text that the bliss of the svarupa of conventional liberation that's inherent in the svarupa, your own atman, that little tiny spark of an atman, that bliss is like, and we mentioned this before, like the water in the hoof print of a calf, compared to the ocean of of bhakti. Remember, this is a dualistic tradition. The Atman is not the cosmic Atman, does not merge into some infinite Brahman as per the Advaita traditions. So therefore, whatever qualities the Atman has are infinitesimal compared to the qualities of Bhagavan. So no one's denying there's Ananda, Satchid Ananda in the Atman, and no one's denying that by the conventional processes of jnana, including Patanjalian, by the way, dhyana yoga, the svarupa, right? What do you get from Patanjali? What do you get? If you chitta vritti nirodha, here's Patanjali, right in the beginning, Atta Yoga Anushasana. I'm going to be saying this a lot. He presents the text. Now he's going to continue yoga. And what is this yoga? Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. All well and good. We know this. Stilling of the mind. But then what happens? Tada. What happens? Drashtu sva rupe vastanam. Let's just spend a moment here before we get back to the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, just to compare the goals, because we've already had a lot of language about the bliss of bhakti eclipsing the bliss of the Atman. So what is the so the goal of Patanjali, and we will use Patanjali as our kind of a comparative. We can use it as a comparative lens because most of you know Patanjali. So what happens when the chitta, the vritti, the states of mind have all been still? There's nothing external to consciousness anymore. Already pratyahara, the senses have been withdrawn from the world in the fifth limb of yoga. And then the sixth, seventh, eighth are progressive states of this, starting with nirodha. So dharana is the sort of preliminary stage. Mind is still wandering. Jnana starts to get more steady, and then the various stages of samadhi. When the mind is more and more and more intensely focused. They're all states of chitta vritti nirodha. So then what's the grand finale? Tada, then what happens if we do all of this? Then what happens? Drashtu svarupe vastanam. There is the situatedness. I know we don't say that in English, but if you had to translate this literally from Sanskrit, avasthanam, the state of being, the situatedness of the seer. Why doesn't Patanjali use the term Atman or Purusha? Because he wants to stress that it's seer. What is the Atman and Purusha? Using the term Atman and Purusha doesn't give us any information. You might as well call it Amagama. It doesn't tell us anything about its nature, but if you call it the seer, then that tells you, okay, it's consciousness. This is the power of consciousness. This is the big mystery. Who am I? What is that on the deepest level? The I, the conscious being that, looking out at the world, asking these questions, as Descartes would put it. What am I? I'm seeing this. I'm seeing itself. But here's the point. Then the seer, let's put it in English, is situated where? Sva Rupa, in its nature. What does bhakti want to do? It wants to, the seer, the drashtu, wants to be avasthanam, where? Bhagavat Rupa, in the form of Bhagavan, in the thoughts of Bhagavan, in the nature of Bhagavan, not merging, always as a distinct entity. There's a dualism there, even though these traditions, the Vaishnava traditions, the Bhagavat traditions, resist the notion of dualism. They want to qualify it. I'm not going to get into that. So what is the seer doing then in bhakti? We know what it's doing. Patanjali is in its svarupa, and that's moksha. That's the conventional moksha. Let's be clear. The conventional moksha that Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu is rejecting. Not rejecting, it's just, no, let me rephrase that. Accepting it, honors it. But it just says bhaktas have no interest in it. No interest in it. Why? Because if you're in your svarupa, then that's your consciousness is only going to be conscious of your own nature. There's going to be no consciousness of what the Vaishnavas say is a superior, a supreme nature beyond that. That's not accessible by your yogic virtuosity of chitta vritti nirodha, which you can do by your own ego practice. If you really want to put a name to it, you can do it by your own willpower, sheer force of will. This is willpower, and not ego in a negative sense. It's aklishta, but it's sheer yogic virtuosity. You nirodha, you still just absolute utter determination and willpower coming from you. Of course, Patanjali, it will say, yes, you can also get it from Ishvara. He does allow that. And Ishvara can give you samadhi, but it doesn't require it. And either way, even if you focus the mind on Ishvara, the goal is still Sarupa Vastanam. The relationship with Ishvara in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra is not bhakti. Look, what do you get from Ishvara Pranidhana? Let's just be clear, because I mean, we've been referring to this several times. So let's just put it in black and white. What do you get from Ishvara Pranidhana in Patanjali to right here, what do you get? Ishvara Pranidhana 245, Samadhi Siddhya, the perfection of Samadhi, of your Svarupa. No bhakti, no prema, no love, no eternal relationship. So this, the Ishvara, the function of Ishvara in Patanjali is not any bhakti. If you want to call this bhakti like Vyas does, he says, there's a kind of bhakti. What's the goal of, what's the purpose of that bhakti? What's the purpose of the pranidhana? The yogi who's following Patanjali, why is that yogi doing Ishvara pranidhana? Samadhi siddhya. You get samadhi. You get samadhi. And what's samadhi? Ultimately, you can go through the 6 stages, all the sub-bijas and vitarka, vichara, all of that. Where does it all end up? Near bija. What's near bija? Right here. Svarupa vasthanam. So therefore, any bliss, so you're absorbed, so you attain the experience of your own innermost core, and that's Satchidananda, and no one's denying there's Ananda there. But the bhaktas are going to say, but Bhagavan, who's infinitely, and we're trying to use language that's beyond space and time and all of our material notions. So we would have to say something like the Atman is infinitesimal, and the Vaishnavism hold that to be true. In fact, the Upanishads state, take the tip of a hair and divide it 10,000 times. That's the size of the Atman. So that's not that we should take the number literally, but it's infinitesimal. And Bhagavan is infinite all over the place. Ananta, 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 every other word of the Gita. So therefore, the bliss in the Atman is infinitesimal compared to the bliss of Bhagavan, which is infinite. So that's why the bhaktas say we're not interested in this infinitesimal little, they don't deny it to be true. They don't deny that it's free of suffering, and certainly much better than any of us are experiencing down here in samsara. But the bhaktas they actually seek love. They don't really, it's not that they're seeking bliss, but that bliss automatically, it comes from their surrender to Bhagavan. Okay, so all of that then, and back we go. So the ocean then is the ocean of bliss. You could read it that way. And Rupa's going to go on to say, and that ocean of bliss eclipses whatever bliss there is in the infinite individual Atman. We've really sort of, Hinduism has been so filtered through Advaita Vedanta since the 60s, for reasons that we could discuss at some point, that it's kind of almost all the Indian traditions, including Buddhist and Jains, the Atmans are individual. They don't merge into some greater Brahman, not in Jainism, not in Buddhism, not in Sankhya, not in Yoga, not in Nyaya, not in Mimamsa, and not in half of Vedanta. Only half of Vedanta, which is Advaita Vedanta, did the Atman then, is this idea put forth that the Atman is ultimately, the world is illusory and ultimately Atman is Brahman, and the Tantra traditions. So those are the monist traditions, and they have their venerable pedigrees, they have their lineages, they have their powerful theologies. I mean, I'm not, but we should be clear, they do not represent yoga writ large. They represent one expression of it. Okay, and this expression then has no interest in this moksha. Okay, so therefore the ocean then is an ocean of bliss, and and there's a subtext there. It's an ocean of bliss compared to the whatever bliss you might find in the Atman. So anyway, for whatever reasons, he speaks of the nectar of bhakti as an ocean. It divides it into quadrants. Okay, so like Patanjali has his padas, the Vedanta Sutra has pada. Normally you have padas in a text, 4 padas. The Vedanta Sutra has 4 padas, and so does the Yoga Sutras. So on we went, and then we got the 6 qualities of devotion. Okay, the first chapter is gonna finish up this discussion. So, and we read 3. What does devotion do? It destroys difficulties. Okay, and we had a discussion of different kinds of papa, of negative karma, that which is fructified, that which is not fructified yet, and bhakti just destroys it all. and it bestows auspiciousness. You become saintly. Remember, all living entities are attracted to your personality. They want to associate with you. I mean, that would just be such a wonderful thing to, if we could all aspire to that, my friends. Let's all aspire to it. What's stopping us? Doesn't matter how long it takes. What else are we going to aspire for? Be idiots? Just carry on being nonsense? Let's at least aspire to be perfectly pure beings that are pure, that don't manipulate people, that simply, try to see all living beings as Atmans. And yes, it bestows auspiciousness. Now, here it is, trivializes moksha. Okay, so trivializes moksha. We finished that, and now we're going to go on to D. But let's just quickly reconnect to that trivialization of moksha, because most of the yoga that's come over to the West, there's all this talk about moksha, 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 or your own Atman, your own Atman, your own Atman, and even Patanjali, Swarupa, Swarupa, Swarupa. Let's bring in some different flavors, which are really probably much more dominant in reality on the ground in India. So trivialization of moksha. We did this, and it's only 2 verses, so we'll pick up again. When the heart is filled with even a little love for the Lord, for Bhagavan, then the 4 goals of life, right? Karma, artha, dhamma, moksha. Karma, you act in the world, you do your dharma, you get prosperity that allows you to enjoy, and finally you get fed up with, you realize you can't really enjoy, somehow there's always something missing, you're always a bit frustrated, and then you seek moksha. Those are the 4 goals of life: karma, artha, dharma, moksha. Even moksha, they turn to nothing but straw, and straw is in Indian vernacular means the most trivial thing. So if you want to say something's absolutely, we might say rubbish, or it's rubbish, it's garbage, something like we might say in our vernaculars. We might say something a bit cruder, right? But in Indian tradition, in literary tradition, you say something is a piece of straw. It's quite standardized, and it just means it has no value whatsoever. Turns or barely any. Perhaps a cow will eat it, but it's dry. It's not even grass. Straw is it's grass without the prana. So how it's basically useless. That's the attitude towards moksha. Why? Because in moksha there is no connection with Bhagavan, and you can have that, my friends. My Western traditions disallowed that. If you didn't accept God, you were in trouble theologically in most of our Abrahamic traditions. Even though there were mystics that used language that sounds very much like Advaita Vedanta, so there were mystics that had those kinds of experiences, but it was always framed in the sense of God. So there's always this kind of, so India has both. And the Atman past was never demonized or made heretical, as it is in certain Western traditions. If you started saying you are the truth, Ana al-Haq, for example, I am the truth, famous Sufi mystic, you were executed. It's heretical. So India always had, recognized, okay, that's a genuine bona fide attainment. And that was the end of the road for many paths, but not for bhakti. Okay, so bhakti then, that's a straw compared to the wonders and marvels of Bhagavan and the possibility of an eternal relationship with this just amazing being. So, and then the second verse he brings in, remember, whenever he makes his points, he's got to support it. This is what this is exegesis. Exegesis is how do you interpret a sacred text? What does it mean to be traditional? It means you always have to support any statement that you make, any claim that you make. You have to substantiate it by a scripture. Just like in philosophy, if you make a claim, you have to support it by reason and argument. And ancient India had its powerful logical traditions. But in theology, the epistemology, the highest epistemology, the highest authority, source of knowledge is scripture. Because in theology, those who accept sort of scripture have realized that human intellect and human sense perception can only generate a certain level of knowledge. You can only know that which the senses perceive, number one, and two, whatever inferences you make from those perceptions. So that's logic. Those are inferences. So those who understand, who feel, well, that's, we want to go beyond that, are more likely to, well, how do you go beyond that? So you have to bypass those modes of knowledge. And well, then what? Well, then either you go into deep meditative states, or you accept the authority of those who have done that. You've got to have some kind of guidance. If you're going to take a leap beyond sense, perception, and reason, how are you going to do that? You're going to figure that out by yourself? Very unlikely. And there might be the odd mystic who did, but most part you accept revelation, either revelation of saints, sages, the rishis, the sages, the yogis that went before you. And of course, if you have a theistic disposition, if you do believe in God, obviously there is a God. It's highly unlikely he's completely and utterly like Aristotle's God, because Aristotle, his God, was completely, didn't know anything about the world, for reasons we don't need to get into. All right, but even Patanjali, the few words he says about Ishvara include the statement that 125, that Purvesham api guru, that he is the guru of the ancients. So even Patanjali in his 22 words in the whole sutra about Ishvara, even amongst those 22 words, the notion that Ishvara reveals, gives us revelation, right? He was a guru. A guru is someone who gives knowledge. So Ishvara, it gives knowledge, right? That's what revelation is, when God gives knowledge, reveals knowledge that is inaccessible to our senses and to our the mind that then takes sensual impressions and conceptualizes them and theorizes them, right? That's philosophy and science. Even Patanjali says that Ishvara bestows revelation. Okay, so with all that said, let's go back to our Eastern Quadrant, and with the trivialization of moksha, then for the theistic traditions, that God is infinitely greater than the Atman, and therefore the qualities of God are infinitely greater, and therefore whatever ananda or bliss there is in the Atman is infinitely eclipsed by the bliss just generating, generating and inherent in the very form and being of God. And so for anyone having a relationship with God accesses that infinite bliss. And when that happens, then the four goals of life culminating in moksha turn to nothing but straw, and all the siddhis, the spiritual powers, levitation, all of that, moksha, right? Just listed with all these sort of, and so forth, and so forth, just sort of in this sort of rather lowly list, or rather, list that doesn't come up to the mark when we're talking about Bhagavan, all of that, and all marvelous enjoyments, all the wonders of the world, all of that. He's saying they follow in the train of the great goddess to devotion. You might get some of that. You might get those siddhis. They follow in the train of bhakti, like her servants. But just like Patanjali says, the real yogi is not interested in the siddhis, neither is a bhakta. Any of these things, not interested even. But the point is, in number C, not even interested in moksha. They just follow along. You're liberated if you're a bhakta. You can have a swarupa vastana. I'm not saying you won't have that, but you just don't want to stay there for all eternity. You don't want to avasthanan in your swarupa for all eternity. You don't want to link, you don't want to be absorbed, because if you're avasthanam or avastitaha, if you're situated in your swarupa, then you have just deprived yourself of the possibility of being absorbed in a relationship with God. And that's the problem. Not that there's anything wrong with having a Svarupa Vastanam experience. That's a wonderful thing. But the bhaktas pick it up and keep going and take their Atman, and they want to sort of connect that Atman relationship with Bhagavan. On we go. Number D, the qualities of bhakti. Now we're on number D. Difficult to attain. Loving devotion, bhakti, is difficult to attain for two reasons. It cannot be attained by even long periods of intense practice that is devoid of attachment. Bhakti is about, well, as Patanjali would say, pranidhana, samarpana. Gita has its various terms. Gita has its various terms. Is somebody not muted? So it can be instantly attained. In one sense, it's easy. Krishna says, he says several times in the Gita, susukam kartamavyayam. It's easy to perform, easy to perform. The practice is easy. He says, look, just offer me a fruit in the Gita. Patram pushpam phalam. Just offer me a fruit, some water, easy, in that sense. But it has to involve complete and utter surrender of the will. That's what really pranidhana and a deep level is. Patanjali, you're kind of not really, you're surrendered, but you want God to give you samadhi. It's not pure. It's, remember the gimme of last class? Either it's gimme material things or gimme moksha. It's not pure. So it cannot be, even by long periods, your lifetimes and lifetimes of intense practice, like Patanjali, Chittavritti Naroda, Chittavritti, mind wanders, bring it back, wanders, bring it back, wanders, bring it back, fast, become emaciated, sit on the banks of the river, eat one berry a day. We'll read the story of Dhruva sometime. Eventually he was just breathing every 4 days. That's how intense he got. And all of that, you're not going to get it if it's devoid of attachment. That's one reason. But if you have attachment, then it's very easy. You don't need long periods of intense practice. You do for Patanjali. Try doing Chittavritti Naroda. See how long you can do it for in the morning, my friends. If I'm on a good day, I do it for 20 minutes. I mean, I might try for an hour, but I'm only really in that place, few minutes if I'm lucky. So, get it. So it's all about attachment. It's love. And Hari does not offer it readily. Why not? Because you get bound by love. The Bhagavatam loves to play with this. The unconquerable one becomes conquered by love. Some of us have been reading in our Rutgers courses about how the Krishna's beloved gopas and gopis and his mother, they all have bound him with their love. His mother says, dance, and claps her hand, and it says just like this, he dances like a wooden puppet, just because he's bound by love. So that's why he doesn't give it readily, because he becomes bound. So only when it's 100%, my friends, not 99, not 99.9. Because if it's 99.9, then that means 0.1. The mind's going to be focused on the 0.1. Another text. Moksha is easily attained through knowledge, the jñāna yoga path. And ordinary enjoyment is easily attained through the virtuous performances of sacrifice, the old Vedic sacrifices. If you do them properly, these, even here in the 16th century, Rūpa still believes in them. Even though by this time, the Vedic sacrificial rites had been obscured for well over a millennia. But he didn't doubt the efficacy of those Vedic rites where you have a fire sacrifice and you pour in the ghee and you pour in the grains and the ghee and you chant your mantras, all that lovely chanting. You can go online, quite exquisite. But it's all gimme. So if you do the rituals correctly, you can get whatever you can get these ordinary enjoyments. So you can get moksha easily through knowledge, and ordinary enjoyment easily through the Vedic sacrifice. But loving devotion to Hari is very difficult to attain, even by means of thousands of spiritual practices, because it's hard to surrender the heart completely, my friends. We've been trapped in samsara since beginningless times, operating on our ego. I, me, mine, gimme. We've been operating in whatever bodies we've had, completely in a self-centered manner. Everything that we do, that we encounter, we're thinking about how we can use it for our own bodily, mental, sexual, emotional satisfaction. So to give that up completely, which is what it requires, it does take many lifetimes. So here he's saying, right? So this is number D, right? So remember, keep our eye on the ball, the 6 qualities of devotion, and number D is difficulty of attainment. Even though actually it's the simplest thing, because it doesn't involve Sanskrit knowledge or book learning or the precision required in Vedic ritualism. You got to have that precise, my friends. If you take one phoneme wrong when you chant, if you go up instead of down in your meter, and then it doesn't work, because you've ruined it. So bhakti compared to that, plus you got to be a Brahmin, you got to be born, and you have to wait till you come back and be born as a Brahmin in a male body. So that would be Vedic study, that would be Vedanta study rather, and that would be Vedic ritualism. So in that sense, they sound difficult, but here it's saying it's easy. But compared to giving up, but the actual bhakti practice is easy. because it doesn't involve anything. You don't need to know knowledge of rituals or Sanskrit learning, but you have to surrender 100% the heart. That's difficult because we're still trapped with the kleshas of vidya. I am the body, mind, and and everything. Think about it. From one moment to the next, we're thinking about how to find happiness. Well, let me go to the fridge and eat something. Let me watch something let me listen to some music, and so on. So that is not so easy. Okay, sorry, I just messed this up. Now let's move on to D. We just did trivialization of moksha. Sorry about this. And we just did the difficulty of attainment. Okay, so that's D. We got 2 more to go. One more about how it's difficult to attain. And now this illustration, remember, he makes a statement, it's got to illustrate it. This is from many of these quotes are from the Bhagavata Purana. I do urge you all to become familiar with the Bhagavata Purana. It is the quintessential, it has been the bhakti text in India that has received the most attention and commentaries and influenced the art of India and the drama and the dance forms and the aesthetics and the culture. Let's call all that culture of poetry and more than anything else. Ram as well, but certainly the Krishna story. So the Bhagavatam is the story, the Bhagavata. And again, and it's a text I've worked with for 45 years. And if I was on a desert island, my friends, I already gave my whole library away. If I were on a desert island and I had to bring one book, it would be the Bhagavata Purana. So that is, for the bhaktas, certainly the Krishna tradition is you don't need anything else. So, consider exploring it, So now he's giving us, so when it says BHP, it's a Bhagavata Purana and it has 12 books. So there's the 5th and then chapters within the books. So 5, 6, 18. Oh, King Yudhisthira, the Lord is the protector, the teacher, the deity, the dear friend, the family guardian, and sometimes even the servant of you Pandavas, right? Krishna is driving the chariot of Arjuna. That's not a very lowly position, but it's mixed caste. The charioteers are a mixture of warrior caste and the Sudra caste, the 2nd and the 4th. The charioteer is called a Suta. So he's a servant of Arjuna. In a battle, your charioteer is not this sort of heroic, it is a heroic position, but you're second. Your job is to protect the charioteer, the Maharajas. So Krishna did that. Supreme Bhagavan did that so sometimes he's even the servant of Pandavas and the Yadus. So be it. The Lord Mukunda grants moksha to his worshippers anytime. Right, he'll give you moksha anytime. What is Patanjali? Right, what do you get? Going back so that we can reinforce, like downward dog. We keep doing it. Reinforce it. What do you get from? Sorry. What do you get from Ishwar Pranidhana? In Patanjali, going backwards back to this again. What happened? Just froze. Right, all of these in the middle of the chapter 2. You get all these little boons if you follow the yamas and the niyamas. What do you get from Patanjali, from Ishwar Pranidhana in Patanjali? 245. What do you get from Ishwar Pranidhanat? That means from, that's the ablative, right? So Ishwar Pranidhana is the noun, and Dhanat is the ablative case. So from the Pranidhana, the pranidha, kind of putting yourself forward, down, place. These are 2 prefixes. So the root verb in Sanskrit is dha, to place. And then you have these prefixes. So pra is actually cognate with pri. So it's pra, forward, down, place. So you think of, offer obeisance to a deity, you put yourself forward and down. So from Ishwara Pranidhana, what do you get? Samadhi siddhya, the perfection of samadhi, nothing to do with bhakti, nothing to do with prema and bhava and love. What is samadhi? It is sarupe vastanam. Okay, so the Lord Mukunda grants moksha to his worshippers anytime, right there. Look, you can get it from, if that's what you want. But he certainly does not always grant bhakti yoga. We have to be 100% pranidhanad without even asking for moksha. If you ask for moksha, get moksha. But then you've just signed away the possibility of eternal relationship with God, my friends. Think carefully what path you tread. What goal is it going to take you to? They're all legitimate. It's not that one is right and others are wrong. There are different goals. We've got to get rid of this silly idea that there's only one goal. At one side, this kind of neo-Advaita idea that all paths lead to one. They do not lead to one. They don't know. They don't say they lead to one. Let's just listen to what they say about themselves. They're not saying that. They lead to different genuine places. They're all genuine. Be aware, be informed consumers when you pick your path. Your path I have no reason to doubt they all take you wherever they say they're going to take you. But don't tell me, or don't say that they are all going to take you to the same place, because that's not what the paths say about themselves. Why do you think they debate for 2,000 years? If they were all taking us to the same place, they'd all sit around and chant Om under a tree and say, oh, well, you're doing, you have this flavor and I have that flavor, we'll all end up in the same place. Let's all hold hands and chant Om. But no, they debate for 2,000 years because they make different claims, and different claims about what the ultimate goal is. So if you want moksha, you can even do bhakti and get it. But you won't get Mukunda, you won't get Govinda, you won't get Bhagavan. So he certainly does not always grant bhakti yoga. Now we're on E. This bliss, right? We've heard a lot about the Satchidananda bliss of the Atman. Now here. If the joy of Brahman were multiplied billions of times, it still would not amount to even a drop of the ocean of the happiness devotion. I was saying this before, and I don't know this to be true, but I wonder whether when Rupa calls his text the ocean of the nectar, the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, the ocean of the nectar of the experience of bhakti, why did he use the metaphor of an ocean? Precisely to kind of have us make this sort of this underlying kind of, which is the underlying theme of the Bhagavata. That's his canonical text. Rupa is the author of the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, but he's writing it. You notice he's always quoting the Bhagavatam because that's the real canonical text. The sub-theme of that is precisely how bhakti trivializes whatever pleasure, bliss you get from moksha. And here, and I wonder why I wonder whether he calls his text the ocean to make that point. Nothing surpasses the ocean, just quantitatively. And the bliss of the Atman is minuscule. So even if the happiness of Brahman, if the joy of Brahman were multiplied billions of times, it still would not amount to even a drop of the ocean of the happiness of bhakti. Even if the happiness of Brahman, and no one's denying it's not blissful. You can't deny that Brahman is Satchidananda. Why can't you deny that? Because the Upanishads say that. Everybody accepts the Upanishads. So all of these traditions are still negotiating their theologies, then navigating their paths, all within the contours of the Vedic corpus. That's what it means to be traditional. Otherwise, you go off like the Buddha did, although it's not clear he went off, by the way. Maybe it was his followers. It's not clear that he himself severed his relationship with the Vedas. That's not at all clear. We don't really have anything for 400 years. So, within 400 years, and even then, there's been some interesting research. I won't get into that, but if you're not going to accept the Vedas, then you go off and do your own thing, and you start your own whatever. Like the Jains, they don't have a relationship with the Vedas, and then eventually the Buddhists don't. What the situation was in the early centuries is very murky. Certainly, a lot of the early followers of the Buddha were Brahmins doing their Vedic rituals. We know that. So they in their minds they weren't severing themselves from the Vedic culture. The Buddha was just another of many charismatic teachers, of course, he was super charismatic, but nonetheless, it's not at all clear that he said things like, if you're going to be a Brahmin, be a real Brahmin, fine. And he said things like, whoa, you're searching for this Atman, but has anyone seen the Atman? Has your guru seen the Atman? Do you know anyone that's seen the Atman? Aren't you then sort of all like blind, following the blind? So he did say things like that, but he didn't necessarily say, I reject the Vedas and the Upanishads. But anyway, that's another, that's so specialists sort of, you can imagine spend careers trying to reconstruct the early histories of Buddhism vis-a-vis the Vedic culture. But nonetheless, so this idea, even if the happiness of Brahman is no more than the water contained in the hoof print of a cow, for me, who I'm situated, so he's quoting some bhakta, right? He's quoting a text called the Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya, and someone in that text that bhakta is saying, who has experienced the Atman. Many of the role models of the Bhagavata Purana have had a Svarupa Vastanam experience. Contra what the Buddha would say, they would say, yes, we have had it. We've experienced our Atman, and they leave that state. And why do they leave the state? Because if you're in that state, you're not conscious of anything other than your Svarupa. Consciousness is just conscious of consciousness. They don't want that. They want to be conscious of Bhagavan. So they leave that. They can enter it anytime they want. They've attained the detachment and all of the, they've attained all the goals of yoga, or all of the, they're aklishta. Their minds are totally and utterly aklishta. They've mastered vairagya and abhyasa, so they can go there anytime they want. They don't want to go there. They want to use their minds and senses to be absorbed in thoughts and service. Remember, service to Bhagavan. In this life and in the next life, go to the divine realm of Bhagavan and just continue forevermore. So, even the happiness of Brahman is no more than the water contained in the hoofprint of a cow. For me, says whoever this speaker is, who I'm situated in the pure ocean of bliss that comes from a clear perception of you, Bhagavan. He's having darshan. He's seeing Bhagavan. He was seeing Bhagavan. He didn't want to go back to his Svarupa Vastanam static states. He's not interested, no more than the water contained in the hoofprint of a calf. And another text, the Bhavartha Deepika. Remember, we're on number E. Now we're talking about the special concentrated joy, but that, right? But that includes, the previous one was the trivialization of moksha, but that also appears in number E, because if you're enjoying this special concentrated joy, often they're going to compare it with the bliss of Brahman. So, final quote, Bhavartha Deepika, those extremely joyful and fortunate people who are wandering about in the ocean of the nectar of your stories, understand that the four goals culminating in moksha, there it is again, and nothing but straw, right? We're familiar with this metaphor now. So those are the bhaktas whose minds have become attracted to the qualities, the form, the qualities, the stories, and the name, the nama, guna, Rūpa, lila of Bhagavan. The name, because the name is non-different, and Patanjali gives the name. He says, okay, Tasyavachika Pranami. He takes us that far, Om. But notice he gives an impersonal name, not the personal Bhagavan. It's not Om Namo Shivaya or Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Those are the personal that's Bhagavan manifesting personality. Notice Patanjali only gives Om, just the impersonal, it's Brahman. But that's a story for another day. So there we are. Now we're on F. So this is the sixth. The sixth characteristic of bhakti is it attracts Krishna. So devotion captivate. This is what captures God. That's why he doesn't give it easily. He doesn't want to be captured by someone who's not pure, who, if you become pure, then you capture God, you control God. The beautiful thing of the Krishna story. Read the Krishna stories, the Vraj Leela, not the whole thing. There's 90 chapters on Krishna, but the first 36 or so are in Vrindavan, where he's not going around establishing dharma. We're not doing, the big Mahabharata war thing, the rich statesman. No, he's just doing nothing other than exchanging love. It's meant to be a portal that the Vraj Leela, the Vraj 36 chapters of the Bhagavad, the 10th book of the Bhagavata, are a portal, or a kind of like a black hole, I think of it as an embassy. I was saying this the other day in class. You're not, when the embassy in if you're in the British embassy in Cairo, you're actually, when you're in that British embassy, you're under the jurisdiction of British law, even though you're in Egypt. So you're under a completely different cultural, legal, social, and aesthetic environment. So the Braj Leela is kind of Krishna brings down, is kind of like an embassy, brings down this kind of, or more like a cultural center than an embassy, because an embassy you do business. A cultural center where you kind of show, you depict you try to attract people, whatever, for tourism or other purposes, right? So you give them a little representation of your country, American cultural center. A bit like that, perhaps. Krishna gives us a glimpse into what love of God looks like, what relationships with God might consist of. The 10th book, my friends, the story of the beautiful baby Krishna. Why don't we read that? Read it, check it out, become enchanted. That's how it starts. So devotion captivates Hari and his dear friends by charming them with love. So everybody, Hari gets captured, and the Bhakta does. For this reason, devotion is considered to be the attractor of Sri Krishna. How do we attract God? Not through study, my friends, not through learning, not through chitta vritti nirodha, virtuosity, just through love. No gimme, pure love. That's the attractor of Sri Krishna. Okay. By the way, if my computer cuts out, just stay. It'll take me 3 or 4 minutes. It does it periodically. It's an old one. I got just given a new one, but I'll have to restart it and then log back on. So don't worry. If all of a sudden the screen goes dead, just hang in there. Right. So now he's got to illustrate that. So 11th canto, BP, Bhagavat Purana. Neither yoga. What was he talking about there? Chitta vritti nirodha. Nor Sankhya philosophy, all that sort of metaphysics and so forth, nor dharma, righteous duty, nor study svadhyaya, nor tapas, nor asceticism, nor vairagya conquers me. These are all good yogic things. And by the way, the bhaktas do all this as well. It's not that the bhaktas don't do generic yoga practices, but they're doing it as an offering. They're doing it to try to attract Krishna. They're doing it out of love. They're not doing it thinking, by my willpower, by these practices, I shall get bhakti. No. By these practices, you can get your swarupa, yes, but not God. So it's not that the devotees don't do it. They do it just as intensely as all the other yogis, but it's their sort of little offering to Bhagavan. What else can I do from my side down here in samsara? I'm doing all the yogic stuff. I'm following all the rules. I'm totally in a mood of surrender, not in a mood of ego. Look at me, big yogi, big tapas, big svadhyaya, big Sanskrit learning. None of that. Do you think Bhishma is impressed with that? So none of that conquers me, Uddhava, as does intense devotion, which in one sense is so easy because you don't need to learn or study or anything. But it's another sense, it's very hard, as he said earlier, because of our ego and because we have all these desires that we're not willing to let go of, my friends. We still have all these things to do, places to go, people to meet. So we're still running around. We're flopping about, fluttering around samsara, wondering why am I so unhappy? Why am I so miserable? Are we all? Oh, I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. And now, in the words of Narad, the great Bhakta, 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. A canto is just a division. That's an old Latin term. In Sanskrit, it's skanda. So it's really cognate, Indo-European. You are the most fortunate in the world of humans. Sages who sanctify the world visit your houses, right? This is somebody, talking about the residents of Vraj, where Krishna spent his childhood. They're not learned. They don't know any. They don't. There's no mention of. They're not learned. They don't know Sanskrit. Krishna's most into his mother, his father, his close friends. They're not learned. They're not cultured. They're cowherders. You go out in the forest every day with the cows, they come back scruffy and dirty. So, but he's saying, Narada's saying, you're the most fortunate in the world of humans. Sages who sanctify the world, right? The holy places in India are holy not because of the Ganga, partly because of the Ganga, but because the sages live there. So sages who sanctify the world, they visit your houses. These simple folk of Vraj, Vrindavan, the cowherding community in where Krishna appears. Because why? Why? Because the supreme Brahman, disguised in the form of a human, clearly dwells there. So that Krishna is the supreme Brahman, as he says in the Gita, Param Dhamam, Param Brahman, Pavitram. The supreme Brahman, not some secondary Brahman. Advaita Vedanta will say Ishvara is secondary, not supreme. That highest Brahman is impersonal, all-pervading, infinite, eternal. And then when it's reflected in Maya, it becomes Ishvara, a secondary kind of tainted by Maya, Ishvara. That's Advaita Vedanta. Not in Vaishnavism, it's the other way around. It's the other way around. The personal God is the highest, and Brahman is just the effulgence of his body. We're reading it in our other class just last week. That as the sun can be hidden by its own light, so Brahman, the infinite, all-pervading effulgence of Brahman, is nothing other than the effulgence of God's form in Krishna theology and Vaishnava theology writ large. So that supreme Brahman, who is a personal being and manifests infinite forms, of course, disguised in the form of a man, clearly dwells in this little clearing in the forests of Vrindavan. Right, so we're on number F, and that's that bhakti is the attraction of Krishna. So the three categories of bhakti, right, there's sadhana, bhava, and prema, have been indicated respectively by means of the 6 special qualities arranged in corresponding hierarchical pairs. Okay, well, what's he saying? So there's 3 categories of devotion. There's sadhana, which is the practices that we do. That's going to be the whole of the next chapter. That's sadhana bhakti. And then as a result of that, you get bhav, you get attraction. And then that deepens into prema, love. So the 3 categories, so what he's saying have been indicated respectively by means of the 6 special qualities. The 6 qualities of devotion, right? 2 of them can be connected to sadhana, 2 with bhav, and 2 with prema. Which ones are which? So the sadhana would be destroys difficulty and bestows auspiciousness. Remember the first 2? It destroys all difficulties, right? Burns your karma, and it bestows auspiciousness. Well, you get that from the sadhana part of bhakti. As that deepens and you get bhav, then what happens? Once you have some affection for God, you're not interested. Trivializes moksha, which is the 3rd. Trivializes moksha, and it's difficult to attain. So that would be A, B, C, and D. So once you actually have some bhav, then not interested in moksha. You just want to keep going and deepen and start swimming in this ocean. Once you've got your big toe is a little bit wet, and when you really and you experience it, you want to go deeper and deeper. So then moksha becomes completely unattractive. And it's difficult to attain, right? So those 2, and then the final 2 are that it is a special kind of, when you experience that love, it's concentrated rasa, it's concentrated bliss, far greater than any bliss of the Svarupa, and it attracts Krishna. Okay, so these 6 qualities, right, which we started this whole discussion, we'll just go back one more time and look at them again. So, right, this is the first wave, and the 6 qualities of devotion. Okay, so from sadhana we get the first 2. Sadhana meaning the practices, the 64. He's gonna list 64 in the next chapter. That's where we turn to next. From the sadhana, it destroys difficulties, burns our karma, just doing those practices. Bestows auspiciousness, becomes sat, becomes saintly. People want to associate with us, right? That's the sadhana. Now, bhava, once you do that, you start to develop a bhava, an affection, the beginning of love, essentially. And when we get that, then no more interested in moksha. Just like Patanjali says, when you get Vairagya, remember the Vairagya verses? You're not interested in anything made of the gunas. Guna Vaitrishnam, Purushakyatir. Once your mind starts being absorbed in the Atman, in the Svarupa, Guna Vaitrishnam, you lose interest in anything made of the gunas. Let's just check in with that and contrast it with this. I think it's good for us to do this because most of you are more familiar with Patanjali, so this makes sense. So what's Vairagya? Down here, well, there's the lower, where, you know, the control mind of someone who's without thirst for sense objects, drishta anushravika, whether you've experienced them yourself or heard about them. So Vairagya means to lose interest in sense objects. But tat param, there's a higher Vairagya. Tat param. Guna Vaitrishnam, you lose interest in what the gunas. What does that mean? Everything made of matter, my friends. Everything is guna. Well, you lose interest in everything, every prakritic thing. And how's that possible? Purusha kyatir. When the mind becomes absorbed in Purusha, it's not the end of the journey. It's not Svarupe Vastanam. It's not near Bija. But even this state, when the mind starts really becoming absorbed, not in itself yet, it's still sort of being absorbed in Purusha. Maybe it's Asmita Samadhi, or he doesn't say, but you lose interest in everything made of the gunas. What's Rūpa saying? You lose interest in moksha, which is the goal of Patanjali. You're going a whole massive step further than that. So trivializes. So bhava, when you have that beginnings of that affection for God, the mind becoming absorbed in a particular mood, your moksha is trivialized and it's difficult to attain. And then eventually you get prema, love. And that at that point, not only are you experiencing, you know, this incredible bliss that moksha, you wouldn't even, you know, we don't give the time of day to the bliss of moksha anymore, but that attracts you, Krishna, because at that point it's 100%. When you have prema, then at that point you're 100%. Okay, so you've got 6 things, 2 of them associated with sadhana, 2 of them associated with bhava, which is the mind becoming absorbed in a certain mood, a certain affection, which deepens into prema. And these 2, when you get to prema, because you're not seeking bliss, that's just a byproduct. Can't help it. It's not that you'll do bhakti to seek bliss, because that would be another gimme, very high type of gimme, but it would still be a gimme. So it's just a byproduct. Okay, so that's what this verse that we just read is about. Down here, the 3 categories of devotion, sadhana, bhava, and prema, have been indicated respectively by means of the 6 special qualities arranged in corresponding pairs, hierarchical pairs. Each one's higher than the other. Pairs, okay, sadhana would be, destroys difficulty, bestows association, that's a pair. Bhava would be, trivializes moksha, difficult to attain. That's the next pair, hierarchical, it's higher. Because at this point, you're not even interested in moksha. And then the highest still, prema, and that's an incredible bliss. And now you have basically captured God, but certainly attracted God. By means of these, the greatness of devotion has been proclaimed. These six characteristics of bhakti. Even a tiny taste of bhakti is tantamount to an understanding of the principle of devotion. Just as we get a little bit of taste, we sort of get a sense of what's going on. Well, logic alone is not. Logic is not going to get you there. It's an unreliable measure of devotion. You can't use logic to gauge your progress, but you can if you get a taste. That's how you tell. Just like with regular yoga, how you tell your progress by what? By your vairagya. How much are you losing attraction for the world? That's a sign of how much you are becoming attracted to the Atman. That's vairagya. So here, even a tiny taste, but logic is not going to get. It's not a reliable measure of your devotion, and that's why the ancient teachers have said, if you're a logician or a philosopher, nowadays we would say a philosopher or even a scientist, a position that is asserted with even meticulous care by clever logicians can be proven to be otherwise by those who are even more clever. Logic is never going to get you anywhere. You get convinced by someone. I'm sitting in on a course on the philosophy of quantum mechanics, and we're still doing all the formalism, which I'm kind of, Not really. That's all the mathematical formalism. But eventually we'll get to in the course. The reason what I'm really sitting in for is you get to all the different ways of interpreting this phenomena. You know, the collapse of the wave function, all of this, all of the the mysteries of quantum mechanics, and superposition and all that. So so all the different theories, and Bohm and all of that. So someone comes up with meticulous care. The same with philosophy. Aristotle, Plato, they spend their whole life intensely and meticulously constructing a metaphysical worldview, and even their own disciples poke holes in it and pull it against. So it's not a question of the point of the metaphysics. Actually, it's someone who's more clever. And the same in India. You had maybe a Buddhist, like a Nagarjuna would emerge, and he would rule the roost for a century. And then some Vedic, and then the Mimamsa would come up with a champion, and there was it'd just be a matter of who's more brilliant, who's got a better memory and memorizing all the rules of logic and all the scriptures and so forth, and who's faster, who's more intellectually quick. And so you're never going to get truth that way. A position, look, this is a wonderful way of ending a chapter. A position that is asserted, right? Think philosophy. Things, whatever, science, a position that is asserted with even meticulous care, serious, sincere, dedicated attempt to understand truth by clever logicians can be proven to be otherwise, but those are even more clever. You need to debate away forever. That's why Bhakti says, just give it up, just surrender to Bhagavan. So that's chapter 1, my friends. And now we move to chapter 2. Eastern Quadrant, second wave, sadhana bhakti. Okay, so now the sadhana. Okay, Patanjali's second chapter, sadhana pada. What is his sadhana? Well, he starts off with Kriya Yoga, and then by the middle of the chapter, that expands into Ashtanga, and the three elements of Kriya we are nestled into the niyamas. So that's his sadhana. And that's the sadhana that will take you to Svarupa Vastanam. He tells you where he's going to take you. Right? He's not messing about. Atta yoga anushasana. Now I'm going to teach you yoga. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. That's what yoga is. And where's it going to take you? Svarupa Vastanam. I mean, there's no small writing at the bottom, in fine print. It's right there at Sutra number 3 where it's going to take you. That's not where this is going to take you. It's going to take you to love of God, bhava and prema. And what about moksha? Straw. Straw. All right, sadhana bhakti. Straw on this side of the way. Straw has a little bit of value. You can burn it, I suppose. Now, sadhana bhakti. Let's kick off. Second wave of the Eastern Quadrant. Emotion that achieves a foundational emotion. So bhava is a particular type of emotion, which is the foundation. Okay, so a mother's bhav is a maternal love. That's the foundation of her love for her child, and the quality of it is protection, actually. And there's always some anxiety. That's the at least from the bhakti point of view, the defining feature of maternal love is a sense of protection, that your conviction that you have to protect your child. And there's this sort of anxiety that, some harm may befall your child. I mean, it's terrifying being a parent, especially when the babies are tiny. It's terrifying. Anything they're so vulnerable. And that's the characteristic of that kind of love. So that's the foundational emotion. Now, the foundational emotion of, let's say, a friendship kind of love is equality. You're equal. And that's and that's love. You can love a friend, but as an equal. So Krishna's friends, when they think of Krishna, they are, because of Yoga Maya, right? Which we'll talk about at some point. Krishna hides his majesty in his lila. Lila means his activities of love, his sort of pastimes is the best word. Or even that's not a perfect word, because pastime suggests that you're kind of bored, so you have to pass the time. Not like that. It's a kind of lila is a wonderful adventure or an episode in Krishna's life. So there, when he steals the butter, that's one lila. When he when he goes to the forest with the gopis, that's another leela. So there's multiple leelas. And in order to perform those leelas, Krishna has to hide his majesty. Because when there's majesty, there's fear and awe. Look at look what happens to Arjuna when Krishna reveals that grotesque form in the was it 11th chapter? Well, I don't know about grotesque, but it's horrific. It freaks Arjuna out, that's for sure. I mean, it's pretty grotesque with warriors getting gnashed to pieces between the teeth of this form. It's a battlefield form. So in order to hide that majesty, in many places in the Old Testament, I'm just collecting all these verses, all of them, about the appearance of God in the Old Testament. So I'm writing a book. And mostly they're the same. In most places, as you can't see God because you're not equipped, you die, right? Your physiology would blow. Doesn't quite say that. I'm adding that, but anyway. But it's pretty. It's distance, it's awe, it's fear, it's majesty. It's hard to say it's love. It's more like fear. And the same with Narayana. The same with some of the forms of God in the Indian traditions, the majestic. So to have love, you've got to have intimacy. To have intimacy, you've got to hide your power. So the parent, is all powerful compared to, let's say, the 2-year-old child, but the parent will hide his or her power and sit on the floor and play choo-choo train. Why? Out of love. So Krishna does that. And the power by which he hides his majesty is called Yogamaya. Yogamaya. There's a yoga studio in New York City, I think closed now, called Yogamaya. So as a result of Yogamaya, you can have these foundational emotions that are not fear and awe and reverence, which is the foundational emotion for most theism, most interactions with God. In Indian texts and Abrahamic texts, now I'm not just picking on the Abrahamic texts, you see a lot of this in the Indian, in many Hindu theistic texts. It's kind of awe and reverence and distance, really. That's the foundational emotion for a lot of that. And we were reading yesterday where there was one text was Krishna saying, "Oh, I'm so bored with all that. I don't care with all of that. I want to have love with my bhaktas. So I hide my power and I put myself under Yogamaya," says Krishna. So otherwise, how am I going to have fun if I know I'm God? So Krishna loses himself in his own leela. So the foundational, once you have Yogamaya, you can have these various foundational emotions, bhavas, such as maternal love. That's the foundation. Friendship love, that's a different foundation. The gopis who just think Krishna is the most gorgeous male in existence, that's the foundation for the gopis' love. So the devotion that the sadhana, the devotion that achieves this above eventually through physical effort is called sadhana. In other words, you're making an effort to follow the 84 processes that are coming up. So the goal of that sadhana is the manifestation in the heart. So when bhaktas do sadhana, let's frame it differently. What are they doing it for? When Patanjali and yogas are doing sadhana, what are they doing it for? Samadhi. And what's samadhi? Svarupa Vastanam. That same third verse. So what's the goal of bhakti? Its goal is the manifestation in the heart of an eternally perfected emotion. Eternally, you don't transcend it or go beyond it. It's not a method to something else. It might be that in Advaita Vedanta, but not in Vaishnavism. It's a method and the goal. So the purpose of sadhana that we'll talk about in this chapter is to develop a bhav. And then the bhav, of course, will then eventually become actual love, prem. So this kind of devotion is mentioned by the divine sage Narada. There he is again in the 7th canto. Right, so are we clear? The purpose of sadhana is not Atman, it's not Swarupa, it's to develop a bhav. And what is a bhav? It's a particular type of love that takes a certain flavor. So it's founded on a flavor, like friendship, or whatever it might be, with God. Love of God, of course. We're talking about, I assume you know that, we're talking about love of God. So friendship with God, or having God as a child, a parental sense that the bhakta thinks, who has the foundational bhav of parenthood, thinks that God, because of Yogamaya, it's covered by this wonderful divine illusion that we all want, with the bhaktas aspire for that Yogamaya. It's not like regular Maya. It's completely opposite. That's why it's Yoga Maya. Yoga, it brings us to God. So that, but because of that power, then the bhakta thinks Krishna is my child and needs my protection. What a wonderful illusion. And that allows you to love God in that way. And some of the most beloved stories of Krishna, beloved stories of Hinduism, are Krishna as a little child being mischievous and his loving ways with his mother. So that's above. So when we aspire for that. So that's the goal of sadhana bhakti. Sadhana means practice. So now he's going to mention the 7th canto. Therefore, the mind should be fixed on Krishna by some means of practice. Now, this sadhana bhakti has 2 divisions, Vaidhi and Rāgānugā. Okay, Vaidhi is going to be rules and regulations, and Rāgānugā is spontaneous. You're not doing it, you're not following strictly rules and regulations anymore. It's actually spontaneously coming from your heart. You don't really need rules and regulations to guide you anymore. Your heart is automatically attracted, but most of us are still doing Vaidhi, which means we might like to think we have a little bit of raga, but for the most part, we want to be on the safe path and follow the footsteps of the great bhaktas that went before us, and we follow the instructions they leave behind. That's Vaidhi. The word Vaidhi in Sanskrit, vidhi, means a rule and a regulation. So what does that mean, Vaidhi? Now he's going to define it. Devotion is called Vaidhi when it manifests from the instructions in scripture. You're following instructions. It's not spontaneous. You're not following your own. It's not that your love is so full of, your heart is so full of love, you don't need any scriptures anymore. Your love just takes you. It just automatically, you've renounced the world. Automatically, you're absorbed in nothing other than Bhagavan. That's Rāgānugā. That's a high state. But you can't just pretend you're in that state. Just make a fool of yourself and fool others. We're in the state of Vaidhi. And whoever gets to the place of Rāgānugā has done Vaidhi for many births, my friends. So you feel privileged just to be on the path of Vaidhi. Let's not imagine where you get a lot of people in the holy places of India rolling around and trying to, pretending to be ecstatic and, and then they get up and go to have a cigarette. Not like that. So what is this Vaidhi? It's called Vaidhi when it manifests from the instruction of scripture and not from the attainment of passion. It's not raga. Raga means passion. So it's passion means when you have passion for something, you can't help it. That passion overtakes your whole being. You don't need rules anymore. You don't need anyone to tell you to do anything. Your passion is the driver. That's Rāgānugā. So that's a much higher state. But when that's not the case, we're not there yet. We're still struggling with our kleshas. We still have our stupid, pathetic, ridiculous desires. And so there we do Vaidhi, but there we do Vaidhi and purify. And then he gives an illustration of this. From the 2nd canto of Bhagavata Purana, the whole Bhagavatam is recited by the great sage Shuka to the king Parikshit, grandson of Arjuna, grandnephew of Krishna, Parikshit after the Mahabharata war. Beautiful story about how they meet, which we'll recite sometime. So, therefore, O Bharata, the one who desires to be without fear, completely surrendered to God. If you're surrendered to God like a baby, completely surrendered to the mother. Guruji Iyengar's lineage, Krishnamacharya's lineage, has beautiful metaphor. In fact, that lineage kind of has a little bit of a schism. The Sri Vaishnava lineage takes 2 kind of branches, and one of the reasons is how they understand bhakti. And one of them uses the metaphor of the cat and the kitten, and the other the monkey. The baby monkey and the mother monkey, and the baby kitten and the cat. So one says the kitten is absolutely helpless, does nothing. The mother picks up the kitten by the scruff of the neck, right? You've seen cats carry their tiny little kittens. They pick them up. It looks, you think, oh my God, no, you're hurting it. But it's natural. The little kitten just dangles and does nothing, completely helpless. So they use that as a metaphor of how we should approach God, as the kitten, completely helpless. And then the other says, no, hang on, that's you got to do it from your side. I mean, it may all be God's grace and it may be all, but still you have to show some sign of some commitment, you have to show some sign of trying from your side. So if you've seen baby monkeys in India, they actually have to cling. Mother is protecting them all, or everything any mother does. But the little baby monkeys are clinging onto underneath her. You've seen, some of you have been to India, you would have seen that. And they have to cling. Mother's there, mother's doing everything, taking care of everything, but the baby has to cling, unlike the kitten. So this slight difference in stress in terms of what does pranidhana mean? What does absolute and utter surrender mean? Is it completely and utterly like the kitten? Or are we always, are we surely expected to they're both beautiful, they both have their theologies, they both have their coherence, they both have, arguments to be made. Why did we take that detour? Oh, to be without fear. In both cases, then, the kitten and the monkey are without fear, although perhaps the baby monkey is a little bit more fearful. If you're clinging, you have to have some awareness. If I let go, I'm lost. My mom, I won't be with my mom anymore. So there might be a little bit of fear there, whereas the kitten has no fear. But anyway, that's me talking. I'm sure that the different those arguing the two positions will have a lot of powerful things to say in support of their position. So one who desires to be without fear of death, of old age, of all the things we fret and fear about, should listen to, sing about, meditate on the glories of Hari, the essence of all. This is bhakti. We don't nirodha the mind. We absorb it in thinking of God. And these are some ways you can absorb the mind. You can sing about, you can sing some beautiful bhajans. And I think Cecilia is going to chant for us after class today. And meditate on the glories, meaning the stories. That's why I'm pointing you to read, to read the stories. Read the stories of Krishna and see if you're attracted, and other forms of Ishvara. Look what Patanjali says. How do you find your Ishtadevata? How do you fall in love with Bhagavan, my friends? Even Patanjali, the minimalist, the theistic minimalist. I have the highest regard for Patanjali. He has a job to do and he's doing it well. He has a dharma to do, and that is teach about here. Svadhyayat Ishtadevata Samprayogaha. How do you connect with your Ishtadevata, your beloved Lord? From study. You read the stories, and mind becomes attracted. Jesus of Nazareth, Krishna, Rama, Svadhyaya. Okay, so back to this. Let's connect that to this. What do you do once you've attracted to your beloved form of Bhagavan? Then you listen to the stories. You sing. All of these traditions have their songs, which encapsulate some little snippets from those stories, and then you meditate on the wonders of your beloved Bhagavan. Or if it's Devi, perhaps it's Devi, and all the cool things that Devi does. You just become absorbed in that, the essence of all. So we're talking about Vaidhi Bhakti, okay? Vaidhi, rules and regulations. Now he quotes another Purana. The Bhagavata is one of the 18 Puranas, the most famous and so forth, but there are others too. Padma is a great long Purana. Vishnu should be remembered continually. My teacher would always say this. He should never be forgotten. All other injunctions and prohibitions should be the servants of just these two. I'll read you a little thing from. Give me a minute. Find it. I put it. I wanted to read you something from my own teacher. He quotes this anyway. So here, this is important. Vishnu should be remembered continually. Instead of nirodhering the mind, you focus it exclusively on Vishnu. This is bhakti. This is the difference between bhakti and Patanjali. Patanjali, you still the mind, and bhakti, you fill it with thoughts, exclusive thoughts of Bhagavan. So that's called smaranam, to remember always. That's the goal of bhakti yoga. The goal of sadhana bhakti. To keep that. And then once you develop the Rāgānugā, you don't have to practice it. Your mind doesn't want to think of anything else. It just automatically and spontaneously takes over the mind and its thinking and its vrittis. But until you're there, we have to practice it. So how do you do it? You listen to the stories. That's practice. You sing it. You sing kirtan, and you meditate. You kind of make yourself do it, just like you make yourself do Chitta Vritti Nirodha. How we make yourself do anything. Make yourself go to dinner. We have a body and a mind, and we just get to decide what to do with it 18 hours a day. And then we call that life. So you get that choice. What do you do with your body mind? So what the bhakta does is Vaidhi bhakti. And that is listening to, singing, meditating on the glories of Hari. So Padma Purana, Vishnu should be remembered continually, should never be forgotten. All other injunctions and prohibitions should be the servants of just these two. If we do this, and all the other 64 processes that we're about to read about are less, not irrelevant, but they're servants. They're secondary to this. If you can do this, you don't have to do anything else. If you can remember Vishnu constantly, which also means you're never forgotten. I mean, he's got it as two different things, just to stress the point. But obviously, if you're remembering continually, that automatically means you're never forgotten. But your repetition means you're stressing a point and you're repeating it. If A, then not B, just to make it really clear. This is it. This is what we aspire for. This injunction should be performed continually by all castes, right? Forget about doing Vedic ritualism if you're not Brahmin. I've said this, and a male, or Vedanta studies. Bhakti sweeps all that aside. Caste is irrelevant, gender is irrelevant, race is irrelevant, social status is irrelevant. All castes, all stages of life. This is bhakti. No one is excluded, as Krishna says. Whoever you are. You may have been excluded from Vedanta study, Vedic study, whatever it might be. Bhakti, no one is. Some of the most powerful bhakti stories, not in the high literature, not in the high Sanskrit literature, but in the vernaculars, feature outcasts, those who are normally excluded, like, females who would be normally excluded from Vedic ritualism, at least, in any active way. They just sit there by the side of the husband without doing, without participating actively. Bhakti sweeps it all aside. It should all castes at all stages of life. Even though it is a daily injunction, it produces results, just like observances such as the 11th day fast. So this is Ekadasi. Vaishnavas fast from grains every 11 days after the full moon and the new moon. It's called Ekadasi, and it brings, this verse is saying that brings results. So this brings results. That's the point. Daily, all the time. It's a practice. Whatever we're doing, we should be thinking of Krishna, of Bhagavan. The minute we're feeling despondent or depressed, immediately we've disconnected, we've forgotten, we're not thinking of Bhagavan. Simple as that. The minute you think of Bhagavan, you connect, you surrender everything to him, then your mind doesn't belong to you anymore. You've devoted. How are you going to be depressed? Everything belongs to Bhagavan. You offer yourself, your mind, whatever you're doing, to Bhagavan. So, 11th canto, another verse. The four castes, Brahmanas and the others, right? Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras. So there will be the Brahmana priestly caste, Kshatriya warrior caste, Vaishya merchants, and Sudras other workforce. Along with the stages of life, right? So the stages of life is in the idealized Vedic social system. First 25 years of brahmacharya, celibate studentship. Next 25 years, grihastha, householder life, family, sexual activity. Then the next 25 years, husband and wife become renunciates and celibate again, but as a couple. Vanaprastha. And then sannyas, because you're going to die anyway. You're 75, so you part company, because otherwise you don't want to die attached, my friends. I know it sounds brutal and harsh, but death is brutal and harsh. And death is going to rip you apart from your spouse and your beloved family members. And if you die attached to them, well, back you come. And are you going to see them again? No, not according to Indian tradition. Not that you're going to reconnect with your same family members. No, not in this tradition. There may be other traditions that like to think that way, but not this one. Bhagavatam says it's like two straws. They bump into each other in the ocean, and then the waves throw them apart. What's the chance that they're going to bump into each other again? And they might. Occasionally, you might have the odd bit of karma to burn up with someone, but don't even expect that to happen. So that's why the last stage of life, husband and wife separate, my friends. You die attached. Well, you know what attachment is? Desire, and a desire is then back you come. That's the mechanism that perpetuates samsara. It's desire. Obviously, it's based on ignorance, and Patanjali says that avidya is the field, the kshetram uttaresham. Right. Anyway, the four castes and the four stages of life. Or don't worry about this. We're born with their respective qualities from the mouth, arms, thigh, and feet of the Supra. Okay, this is an old Rig Vedic verse we don't have to worry about. The Purusha Shukta, which talks about the caste system as coming from this kind of a form of God. And a big debate about was it, let's not get into that. Those who do not worship the Supreme Person, the non-theists, who's clearly the source of oneself, right? Just like the spark, the sun is the source of the spark. So if we don't worship Bhagavan, who is the source of our own self, our Svarupa, if we want to use Patanjali's term, let's see if he does actually. I'm curious now. Second wave, verse 11. No, Bhajati Avajanati Stanad Brashta Patanda Yesham Purusha Sakshat Atma Prabhavam Ishvaram. No, doesn't say Svarupa. Right, but disregard him, slip from their present state of existence and fall below. So I don't know what to say about that. It sounds kind of a bit like the sort of statement you might find in other types of theisms and other outside of India and other theistic traditions. If you don't worship God, you fall into, because not hell. This wouldn't be hell, but you lose your human form. So I don't have much to say about that. It's not my favorite verse. But let's go with the positive results of this injunction. Basically, it's saying if you don't worship God, you go down. Your next birth is going to be lower than the present one, something like that. You fall below. Right, positive. A man worshipping, a man or woman, worshipping by means of the path of either Vaidika or Tantrika rituals. This is not right-handed, left-handed Tantra. When the term Tantra is used in these texts, it means texts that are not Vedic. The Vedic would be the Vedas and the Upanishads, and the Tantrika with other kinds of texts, like Puranas would be considered Tantrikas. It doesn't mean that Tantra you find in Bengal necessarily. So it doesn't matter if you worship by either path. If you worship Bhagavan, Krishna says, achieves his desired end from me, both in this world and the next. So if you worship God for gimme, then you'll get your desired end. But if you this world you want stuff, God can give it. Give us this day our daily bread, we'll give it to you. And in the next, you'll get to good birth in the celestial realm. So the Vaidika and Tantrika rituals are about getting material things. So the Vedika rituals, the old Vedic rites, are about getting rain, success, victory, progeny, and the Tantrika rituals are about all kinds of similar things, also maybe siddhis, mystic powers. So if you worship either way, Krishna says, okay, I'll give you a desired end. Right. Oh, divine sage. Action that's a Vaidhi bhakti that's not really seeking God. It's a kind of a gimme Vaidhi bhakti. Remember Vaidhi rules and regulations. If you follow those, so you're doing bhakti, Vaidhi bhakti, but you're not really looking for bhav. Remember, keep the word bhav in mind. If you're genuine, you're looking for bhav. Just like Patanjali says, the real yogis, they don't want the mystic powers. Remember that? They're of no interest to the real yogis. They're only those minds whose outgoing minds. Says that. So one can do bhakti. Well, we've mentioned this a number of times. For Vaidhi bhakti, which is what we're talking about now, rules and regulation bhakti, but they want, they're doing it for, some material gain. We get that. Right. A divine sage, action that was prescribed in scripture and directed towards Hari is said to be this kind of bhakti, Vaidhi. But you can't jump Vaidhi bhakti. By means of it, the highest devotion is achieved. You've got to go through Vaidhi. At least 99% of us do. And if you have Rāgānugā, well, then you did the work in a past life. You can't skip over Vaidhi Bhakti. You can't go from a completely klishta state. Even Patanjali, you got to do Kriya Yoga. What do you do? Kriya Kleshatanu. You weaken the kleshas. You got to practice. Same with Ashtanga. What do you get from Ashtanga? Ashuddhikshaye. You weaken the impurities. You remove the impurities. So you can't jump Vaidhi Bhakti, even though it's based on, the formally following the rules and regulation. It's not spontaneous love. But by following it, mind gets pure, Krishna gets attracted, and the highest devotion is achieved. So who's eligible for Vaidhi Bhakti? A person who, by means of some extremely good fortune, I mean, how do we get attracted to Bhakti in the first place? It's good fortune. You could say, well, past life, but then how do you get it in the past life? Well, past life before that. Well, how about that one? You just end up in an infinite regress. So at some point you have to accept there's grace. Grace of Ishvara, grace of the Guru. That's why we honor our Gurus. They came and they gave us Bhakti. They undertook enormous austerities and troubles, and some came to the West and they gave us Bhakti. So who knows? Why does someone have the samskaric disposition to accept it and others don't? Who can answer that question? So he just says it's extremely good fortune. There's no way you can answer that. It's causeless. It's causeless. There's no cause. You try to identify a cause, then you say, well, what's the cause of that cause then? If you say there's a cause, well, my guru gave it to me. Well, why you give it to you and not someone else? What's that cause then? At some point, you have to run into the notion of causeless. If there's any cause, you can then just say, well, what's the cause of that? A person who, by means of he just leaves it alone. He just says, extremely good fortune. You can't philosophize that. How do we get our first seed of Bhakti? Everything has a first seed, including Bhakti. You like your Ben & Jerry caramel ice cream? Well, you had it first. There was a first seed. You tasted it for the first time. And then you had that seed, and then the next day you want to repeat it. So anything that you like because you have a memory of it, and it's a pleasant memory. Where's the memory come from? A sense impression. Where's the sense impression come from? Your senses contact an external object. It has to be a first time for it. And then it becomes a memory, then it becomes a desire, and then you repeat it and repeat it. Well, Bhakti is no different. It's not a sense. It's not a desire for something sensual. It's desire for God. But where's that come from? It has to come from the outside, through the ear. Usually, you hear about it. So it's causeless. How do you run into it? It's causeless. So he just says extremely good fortune. So a person who, by some means of some extremely good fortune, has natural faith, comes from the heart in Bhakti. Now, neither too attached. If you're too attached to the world, you're not going to want to do Bhakti, because Bhakti is still a yogi. You still have to do yamas and niyamas. You still do the Vaidhi Bhakti. It involves all of the yamas and niyamas. Nor too averse to the world. If you're too averse to the world, then you renounce it all. You don't recognize that actually, well, it's not mine to renounce. It's Bhagavan's. I should be offering it, not renouncing it. I should be offering everything to God. So if you are too averse to it, then you renounce it too radically. First, apart from just becoming very, if you renounce too, you become kind of angry. Actually, a lot of the stories of those, tapas folks that come out of the forest in the stories of ancient India, you don't want to mess with them. You give them a glass of water with your left hand instead of your right. They curse you to be a lizard for 100 lives. Those guys have got serious repressed anger issues. Some of those yogis, Vishishta and others. So if you're too averse to the world, you become hard and and then there's a lot of ego there. I'm suffering, so I'm going to announce the cause of my suffering, which is this world. So it's still completely filtered through a sense of the eye that's suffering. And then off you go and seek the Atman, and hopefully if you attain the Atman, then you become blissful. At least you get the bliss of the Atman. But you don't want to be too averse to the world. What you want to do is see everything as God, as Ishvara Shakti. So if you're neither too attached nor too averse to the world, that person is eligible for Vaidhi Bhakti. If you're too renounced, you're going to go off and probably follow jñāna. Or one shouldn't be averse to that which is actually Bhagavan. Prakriti is in Devi Yasha Guna Mai Mama Maya. Krishna says this world of gunas is mine, it's my Maya. So a bhakta recognizes that. You're going to renounce. You give it back to who it belongs to. You offer, including your own body, everything. Offer, give everything back to Bhagavan. So you don't want to be too averse. Right. Illustration as always, 11th canto. Krishna says to his great friend Uddhava, the way of devotion leads to perfection for the person, man or woman, who has a natural faith in stories about me. You're naturally attracted. How does that come about? We can't say. Some people think it's just a silly fairy story or some just Hindu mythology, you know. Well, another person is enchanted. Who can say why it happens this way and not that way? So, is neither too attached nor too disgusted with the world. Now, who's eligible for bhakti? 3 types: highest, average, and lowest. Remember Patanjali? He says it's near for the intense and middle for the middling, and takes a long time for the karnishta, he says. So 3 types again. Who's the highest? So these are eligible for Vaidhi bhakti, eligible for following the rules and regulations, and really seriously taking up the path, right? The 64 processes are coming up in this chapter. Right, he's just a preamble to the 64. This is all a preamble to sadhana bhakti. He's just telling us various things about who's eligible, who's going to take up the path in the first place. Well, the highest type sort of person is expert knowledge of scripture and its interpretation. So completely has dedicated his mind to really researching the path and the theologies and the commentaries on the theologies. Right, in this tradition, that's the Bhagavata Purana, whose conviction is completely firm, who is, he's fixed, dhira, drishta, dhira, there's a word for it, fixed, forget now. So he's completely fixed, whose faith is strong, right, still hasn't maybe got bhav, still hasn't necessarily attained higher states of real, genuine, spontaneous affection, but is really going for it, and it knows the scripture, its interpretation, conviction is firm, nishta, that's the word, nishta. And whose faith is strong, is considered to be the highest among those eligible for Vaidhi bhakti. That's a person is highly eligible, coming from a place of knowledge, strong conviction, and strong faith. What the average is, no expert knowledge of scripture. He knows a few stories here and there, but not really a deeply learned person in its interpretation, but possesses firm faith. That's good enough. That's average. May not be a scholar. And who's the lowest? The faith is weak, easily swayed, falls off the path every time you walk past a Ben and Jerry's store. It's just to be but it doesn't matter. You get back on. It's got to start somewhere. They're still eligible. He's not saying they're not eligible. 3 types are eligible. So even with weak faith, you're eligible, and then that's a good thing. Then you're on the path, and eventually you go from weak to average, and then average to highest. If we have weak faith, we're blessed. We have the beej, the bhakti lata beej. We have the seed. It's just a matter of a few lifetimes. What's that in terms of beginningless birth? What's a few more lives, my friends? If it's true, as all these traditions, Buddhism, Jainism, and Hindu, a lot of them, all say, anadi janma. We've been in this samsara since beginningless time. So what's a few more? So weak faith is better than no faith. Now, among the 4 types of eligible people mentioned in the Gita and other scriptures, and I actually got this ready for you, is the Gita, chapter 7, verse 16. Krishna talks about 4 kinds among benevolent men, right? Chatur vidha bhajanti mam janaha sukritino. They're pious, like sukha. They do sukrit. They do good things. Arjuna. So they're chatur vidha, right? 4 types. Who are they? Arto, jñāsur, artarthi, jñāni cha bharatarshava. Okay, these are the 4. What are they? Who approaches God? The distressed. Gimme, gimme. Help me, help me. Those who desire wealth. Gimme, gimme. Those who desire knowledge, gimme, and knowledge would be, of course, moksha, right? Jnana, jnani, the jnanis. The jnani is one who wants jnana of the Atman, and the man of wisdom. What's the difference? Not asking for anything, my friends, right? Distressed is asking, desire wealth is asking, desire. Man of wisdom's not. Why? Of him, of them, the man of wisdom, the fourth, eternally steadfast. Remember, he was just talking about steadfast, the highest. Remember, in the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, the highest of the four eligible. Steadfast, firm faith, devoted to the one alone. It's not asking, no gimme, not even moksha. It's preeminent. So Gita's saying the same, some very similar. I am indeed exceedingly fond of the man of wisdom, and he and she is fond of me. Why is he fond? Because they're not asking for anything. It's pure. The other three are asking. Okay, and this is the Gita verse, right? And Krishna says all these are indeed noble. They're all noble. They're all bhaktas in some form or fashion. But the man of wisdom, the fourth, who is not asking, is thought to be my very self. He's captured Krishna's heart. He indeed, whose mind is steadfast, abides in me, the supreme goal. At the end of many births, look, my friends, look. Many births, the man of wisdom resorts to me. It takes many births. So you start off with weak bhakti, then medium bhakti, then highest bhakti. At the end of many births, bahuram janmanamante jnāna prapadyante. A person with knowledge, he hasn't quite translated this well. Because bahunam janmanamante, after many births, jnānavam, the one with knowledge of the Atman, surrenders to me. Prapadya is pranidhana, same thing. So one who knows the Atman, you may know the Atman, it doesn't mean you know God. It may take many births, even though you have jnana, mam prapadyante, to surrender to me. And then what happens when you surrender? Vasudeva sarvamati. Vasudeva is everything. Krishna is everything. I painted this on a rock. I have a tiny cottage in the UK. I got all these lovely natural Celtic rocks, and I wrote this on bar right outside my house. Vasudeva Sarvamiti. They all think I'm weird, but I've got Hindu statuary all over these. Anyway, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Samahatma Sudurlapaha. Such a great soul is very rare. Who? Vasudeva Sarvamiti, the one who thinks Vasudeva is everything. Okay, so that is being referred to by Rupa here. Among the four types of eligible people, right? He's also talking about eligible, right? He's saying three types: highest, average, lowest. So highest. Now let's see. The Gita says four. How's he going to reconcile that? Among the four types of eligible people mentioned in the Gita and other scriptures, the one who receives the grace of the Lord, or one of his dear devotees. If you have the chance to meet a real bhakta, a real padam, a real pure bhakta, we're going to see that's one of the requirements of bhakti, that you to actually be inspired and touched and serve someone who is completely free of all ego and exclusively devoted to Bhagavan. That's the real guru. Should be very renounced, ascetic, renounced completely and utterly. So there's no bribery, no attraction to any material things. So there's no question of exploiting the disciples. Very, very rare. So one who receives the grace of the Bhagavan or one of his dear devotees, this is how we get our first seed of bhakti. It's got to come from the outside. So it's grace. It's a causeless, no cause. Either comes from Ishvara or one of his dear devotees, gets rid of an unsteady emotional nature. Our minds are always all over the place, unsteady. Now we're happy. Now we're sad. Now we like this person. Now we don't like him anymore. Now this person offended me. Oh, no, now I hate him. Okay, now I like him again. It's just unsteady emotional nature. Isn't that a lovely little phrase? When we receive this grace, we get out of this. Richita vritti. What's Patanjali say? Nirodha it. That's his solution. Just nirodha it completely. Not bhakti. You just vritti about Bhagavan. So one who receives the grace of the Lord or one of his dear devotees gets rid of an unsteady emotional nature and becomes eligible for pure devotion. That's high, where the Rāgānugā. Okay, remember the Rāgānugā, right? Let's just write this down because we don't want to keep the two types of bhakti is Vaidhi and Rāgānugā. Okay, so make a note of this, my friends. Sadhana bhakti is of two kinds. The sadhana is, this chapter is sadhana bhakti. And it comes, and there's two types. One is the following the rules and regulations, which is you and me. Don't even think about pretending that we are Rāgānugā. You'd just be deluding yourself. So Vaidhi, follow rules and regulations, and then Rāgānugā is spontaneous. He hasn't defined it yet. He's talking about Vaidhi yet. He's going to define Rāgānugā later. But we'll see it's defined as spontaneous. It comes from, you don't need to follow Vaidhi, the rules anymore. But Vaidhi is so remember these two words, please. Vaidhi, bhakti, so sadhana, two types. Okay, sadhana means practice. You're practicing the bhakti. And then the sadhana is either Vaidhi, sadhana, or Rāgānugā, which is spontaneous and in no need of any scriptural advice or anything. Just comes from the heart, it overwhelms. And at that point, you don't even, you act eccentrically and socially bizarrely because it's just your natural love has overwhelmed your mind. That's Rāgānugā. Right, so now for a long time we're going to be talking about Vaidhi, and then towards the end of the chapter we'll get to Rāgānugā. But please keep your eye on the ball. This chapter is sadhana, just like the first chapter was definition of bhakti, and then we looked at those 6 characteristics, and that was the mainstay of chapter 1 of the first wave. Second wave, this is our theme, and the bulk of the chapter is going to be Vaidhi. So write those 2 words down. Right. So we were talking about the 4 types, but if we receive the grace of the Lord or one of his beloved, Bhagavatas, the Bhagavata is the name of the text, but it's also the name of the person who follows Bhagavan, is a Bhagavata with a small b, and with a big B, it's the name of the text, the Bhagavata Purana. So you can call him a Bhakta or a Bhagavata. So one who receives that grace gets rid of an unsteady emotional nature. I love that. An unsteady emotional nature. And becomes eligible for pure bhakti. And now we need some verses to support it, as exemplified by the elephant Gajendra, Shaunaka, and other sages, Dhruva, and the 4 holy men. Okay, each of these are like the 4 in the Gita. Gajendra was an elephant in distress and appealed to Vishnu out of distress. Shaunaka and the other sages, Dhruva, he must have been seeking wealth. I can't remember Shaunaka's story. I did actually try to look it up, and I did start looking it up, and I got distracted. And then the sages that were seeking jñāna. Okay, remember the Gita. Where is the Gita? 4 types of people. And but only the man of wisdom is the one that Krishna is exceedingly fond of, because he's not asking for anything. But the other are distressed, desire wealth, desire knowledge. So distress means desire help. We could have put desired help, desire wealth, desire knowledge. So he's given examples here of those 3. The elephant was in distress. I can't fully remember, but by process of elimination, he must have been somehow desiring wealth, but that doesn't quite sound right, so I'm a bit hesitant there. But Dhruva, I'm sorry. Dhruva's desiring wealth. He wants a kingdom. He's only 5 years old. I'm going to read his story. I have to give a talk at the LMU. LMU's got a great yoga program, Chris Chappell. Excellent. If you're thinking of doing an MA in yoga, you can do it with us at Rutgers, but you could do it at LMU with Chris Chappell. So anyway, we're going to do the Ashtanga in the Bhagavatam, and Dhruva does the Ashtanga, and he's seeking wealth. He doesn't know anything about Vishnu. He's just been told he wants a kingdom greater than his father. So he would be over here desiring wealth. Okay, so he's giving an example of these 4 kinds. So Dhruva desires wealth. Gajendra's the elephant. He's fighting with a crocodile, but he's in the battle goes on for 1,000 years. Alligators pulling him in the river, and then he pulls him out, in, out, out. And eventually, because he's, the water favors the crocodile, it's this natural element, he's actually at his last, last prana is just completely depleted. And at this point, he's about to lose this tug of war. And he then just surrenders to Vishnu. And he's a dumb beast. So the story illustrates, well, in the Bhagavatam, it illustrates even a beast can surrender to God. But Rupa's connecting it with the Gita, those 4 types. So he's in distress, Shaunaka seeking knowledge, and Dhruva seeking wealth. And the 4 holy men, I don't know, maybe, they're just wise. They go to see Vishnu because they know Vishnu's awesome. They're not asking for anything. They've already attained their Atman. So this is the 4th, and the 4 Kumaras they're also little boys. They're 5 and Dhruva's 5, but they're different stories. Anyway, okay, so this is just an illustration of that verse in the Gita. 22. As long as the demon, and we have 7 more minutes, 10 more minutes. Take some questions, and then Cecilia, if she's here, will do kirtan. Lakshmi, he had a dentist appointment last time. So, Cecilia, are you here?
Yes, I saw her.
Okay, excellent. So we'll do another 8 or 9 minutes, and then we will take some questions. And then, and if you don't get a chance to ask your questions, on these.
Sure.
Oh, okay, Cici, we will just do another 10 minutes, yeah?
Right, yes.
And then we'll just take some questions. Is that okay with you?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, and then if you don't get a chance to ask the questions you want to during the reading of the text, we can just add another session on at the end of it all, just for questions. So I don't want anyone to feel like they didn't get their question, a chance to express their question. It's difficult for me to answer emails. I get so many now. Oh my gosh. But I do. I suppose it's a blessing. I do answer them all. So I don't answer it because I got lost. Right. As long as the demoness, the Rakshasi, of the desire for ordinary enjoyment or moksha, look at that, demoness, desire for moksha, mumuksha, it's called, the Dvaita calls it mumuksha, the desire. Dvaita would say you have to have it. It's a requirement, the Advaita path. Vairagya, there's 4 things, Vairagya, whatever it is. One of them is mumuksha, the desire for liberation. Rupa's calling it demoness. How about that? So as long as the demoness of the desire, why is it a demoness? She captures your mind and sucks your, a demoness sucks your blood, right? So it sucks your life, your prana. Here, for your desire for bhoga, well, all yogis would agree with that, but even moksha. As long as that, because if you desire moksha, my friends, you're severing yourself from God, Bhagavan. Do you get the point? If there is a Bhagavan, as this text is grounded in, if that's true, then if you're in your Svarupa Vastanam, you've just severed yourself from Bhagavan. If Bhagavan is an eternal distinct being as per Vaishnava theology, not Advaita theology. Advaita theology, there's Ishvara there, but Ishvara dissolves at the end of it all. When you become enlightened, there's no more creation, therefore there's no more creator. There was no more Ishvara, everything dissolved, there's just infinite, all-pervading Satchidananda Brahman. This tradition doesn't deny that. It says, yeah, if that's what you want, you can attain that state. Because when you're Svarupa Vastanam, it's exactly what Patanjali's talking about, even though Patanjali is not a Advaita at all. But still, when you're Svarupa Vastanam, absorbed in your own nature, then you're not absorbed in anything else, then are you? So then you're not aware of the world, and you're not aware of Ishvara. Now, whether they continue to exist for others, as Patanjali says they do, or that's a theological point. But you've just severed yourself. If you opt for the Svarupa Vastanam, and you're perfectly entitled to, before you sign that contract, have a little think, because the minute you sign that contract and you go that route and you attain that goal, you are now you're no longer suffering. You're attaining bliss. No one's denying that. but you are now no longer you no longer have a body, mind, or instruments to even seek God. You're now just absorbed in your own infinite eternal nature. How are you gonna get out of that? That's why they call it hell, the Bhagavatam. You get stuck in that. How are you going to get out? You don't have a mind and senses to even say, oh, wait a minute, is there a God? Hang on, did I get off the train too soon? You don't even have the equipment to think that way. So it's pretty serious what we use our human life for. There's a lot more that can be said there, but I want to stick to the text because that's all my spiel. But here, what does it say? As long as the demoness of the desire for enjoyment or moksha, we see this repeated sub theme here, trivializing as Rūpa says. Rūpa is the author of the text. The 16th, not the translator of it, which is David Haberman, who's, teaches at University of Iowa. No, when I say Rūpa, I mean the 16th century disciple of Sri Caitanya, who wrote this Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. But notice he's writing it, but thoroughly grounding it. Every single thing he says, he's grounding it in the Bhagavatam. He's not presuming to give us anything new. You never presume that if you're a traditional anything, Vedantin, anything. You never presume that, that I sat under a tree and I had this great enlightenment experience and now I'm coming out to the world to share it. It's never been discovered before. No way. You are simply see yourself as passing on the tradition that's been handed down since time immemorial and you're always going to think by sages greater than you, a million times greater than you. That's thinking of a lineage. That's parampara. That's lineage. So anytime he says anything, he quotes the Bhagavatam. So what's he saying here? As long as the demoness of the desire for ordinary enjoyment or moksha exists in the heart, if that's in the heart, how can happiness of devotion arise there? If your mind is absorbed in material things, well, then your mind is constantly plotting and scheming and fantasizing and striving to attain those material enjoyments. And as long as you're seeking moksha, constantly you're going to be thinking about, oh, this world is Maya, Brahma, Jagat Mityam, Brahman Satyam, all the great Upanishadic Mahavakyas you're going to be repeating. Your mind's going to be full of cultivated jñāna that will take you to moksha. So your mind's going to be full of that. So as long as either of those two things are occupying your mind, how can the happiness of devotion arise? There's no room. You've dedicated your mind to something else. Well, that's free will. You've got a mind and you get to fill it with whatever you want, my friends. Accordingly, devotion seizes with supreme love the mind and senses of especially those people who do not desire moksha. How many times is he going to say that? Why does he have to keep saying it? For the same reason as I keep saying it, because we're at our present moment, in our yoga world in the West, most people, and I've been teaching in yoga studios for decades, most people think the goal of yoga is moksha. And so if you want to sort of resist that and suggest there is these other goals, you have to really keep resisting, because people are there's some samskaras in their mind that they receive from wherever are all absorbed, are all attained from traditions that seek moksha. The same in Rūpa's time, 16th century, Bengal. The Neo-Advaita was a very strong tradition. Not in the South. South, you've got the Vaishnava tradition, Krishnamacharya. They have strongholds. But in the 16th century, Krishna devotion was just about Rūpa was pivotal to the explosion of Krishna bhakti, but it was still, it was still Chaitanya had just passed away, the great charismatic propounder of Krishna bhakti, who his devotees say was actually an incarnation of Krishna. But so the landscape was quite Advaita and Shakta. And so in order to, establish this Krishna devotion as not just a method, but a goal, the bhakti is the goal. You keep doing bhakti for eternally. Then you have to keep, and you even make it one of the 6 qualities of devotion, the trivialization of moksha. So he's going on and on about it to make the point that the goal here is not the goal of moksha that you find in other traditions. Okay. So again, he's repeating it there. He repeated it here. Look, 2 verses, one after the other. Devotion seizes with supreme love the mind and senses of especially those people who do not desire moksha. If you desire moksha, you don't desire Bhagavan. Or you want the Bhagavan just to give you moksha. You're just using Bhagavan as a prop. You're using Bhagavan as a tool to fix your mind on, but ultimately you want to go beyond all that mental construction and however you might frame it to yourself, and you want to go beyond that to your own Sarupa. So you're using Bhagavan as a tool, as a method. And that's not real bhakti. And we are almost out of time, so we'll finish. Look at all the verses on this. Look at all the verses on this. There's 10 verses. It's going on and on about moksha. Let's quickly read them, and we'll pick them up again next Friday. So, third canto of the Bhagavatam. By means of my beautiful limbs, my exciting play, the Leela, the stories in the 10th book, my smile, my sight, my lovely speech, devotion seizes the soul and senses of those who do not desire moksha. Another verse. There is never a desire of moksha among those devotees whose minds are satisfied in the service, that's love, of the lotus feet of Krishna. And then again in the Bhagavatam, oh Lord, which of the four goals, and he goes on and on. And we'll pick up there, and we'll read these verses. So we'll start, maybe someone can remind me how far we got up to, verse 24. And we have, how many verses do we have? We got Bhava. So this, we're not doing too bad. We got, oh my goodness, Sadhana Bhakti's 309 verses. So I'm going to have to think about whether we want to read every single. I'd like to read every single one of them, but we'll see how we all feel. I don't know. I could, we could read them faster, but then what's the point in having a teacher? You just read them for yourself. All right, my friends. Questions? Any questions?
Edwin, I do.
Yes, I want to see. I want to see my friend Alex. Alex, you got white hair, same as me, mate. Look, you grown your hair. He's become a bubba. Look at Alex. Tell you what, you have wait. Just take care of your mum now. Don't go running off to the forest of Vrindavan. Finish up your dharma, and then we'll go together. All right? We'll go to Braj. Yeah. Question. Sorry. Anybody?
I did.
Yes.
Shanti. I had a question. The one that you recently mentioned. In fact, I had two questions. Let me start with the one that you just mentioned. Using Bhagavan as a tool is not real bhakti. I know what you mean, but isn't that a better way of anchoring oneself than trying to wait for real Rāgānugā?
No, what the verse was saying is using Bhagavan as a tool to attain moksha. Then that's not considered real bhakti. That's jñāna mishrita bhakti. So if you're using Bhagavan and you're, worshipping and focusing on Bhagavan, but you don't want Bhagavan, you want moksha, you want Svarupa Vastanam. That is what the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu is saying is not pure bhakti. It's bhakti, but it's not pure. Okay. You're not interested in Bhagavan. You're interested in moksha. And that's Patanjali and Ishwar Pranidhana, because the goal of that is Samadhi Siddhya. That's been repeated again and again and again in this Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, that point.
Okay, so the Rāgānugā, it's very few people have the spontaneous bhakti. The only people that popped in my head was Ramakrishna, and then Prahlada.
Yeah.
And would you then categorize in the modern times Mother Teresa and Father Damien, who did their service, but with God in mind? Would that be a Rāgānugā?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about any particular people, but I think there are great, wonderful bhaktas. I've had the good fortune of meeting. It's not for me to say who's a Rāgānugā and so forth, but What does it matter how long it takes? I mean, how long do you think it's going to take to do Chittavritti Nirodha and have a Swarupa Vastanam experience? That would take lifetimes too. So the point is, whatever we decide what our goal is going to be, do we seek our own Atman or do we seek Bhagavan? And then we just get on that path, and we don't worry about how long it takes. And if it's hard, that doesn't matter. It's better than suffering in samsara. And in fact, the bhakta assumes, out of humility, that it will take many, many lifetimes. You assume that. You don't think, oh, I'm a big shot bhakta and I'm going to capture, I'm going to make it to Rāgānugā in this life. That would be quite arrogant. There's a beautiful story of, I don't know the source of it. I think it's in the Sri Vaishnava tradition, Krishnamacharyas, and the Narada, this sage, we met his name a couple of times, and of course, Narad. And he comes down, and there was a Brahmin bhakta, and he's, fairly, has the arrogance of a Brahmin, and he says, oh, I'm doing all this pujas and bhakti, and I'm, all these Vaidhi bhakti. When am I going to get bhakti? And Narada says, well, it's going to take you another 3 or 4 lifetimes. And he became so disgusted that he just stomped off, gave up his practices. And then Narad went to see another of his disciples, the poor, kind of, low on the social order, sitting under a banyan tree. And he says, and then Narada said, Narada says, he didn't ask, unlike the other man. Narada said, would you like to know, how many lifetimes you have? And the bhakta said, well, not really. I'm quite happy doing my bhakti. I'm doing my seva. And Narada said, well, I'll tell you, you'll have as many lifetimes as there are leaves on the banyan tree. You know how huge a banyan tree is. And the bhakta got up in ecstasy. Oh, how wonderful, how wonderful, how wonderful. One day at least, and now I know for sure one day it will be me. Such a surrendered, wasn't thinking about his own suffering in samsara. He was just thinking about his bhajan and his kirtan and his seva. And the minute he said that, all the leaves of the banyan tree fell down from that beautiful heart. So it's not a high Sanskrit story. It's kind of a rural village, powerful, kind of village bhakti story. But what else are we gonna do, Shanti? Whether it's hard, it's not hard. Whether it's we don't know. Who can say how long it will take? We have to just decide, what are we going to do right now? It's a human form of life right now, and we make the choice. If you want, and it's not that the path of Atman is, well, Rūpa says it's easier, but that's still fairly arduous. So what does it matter how long it takes?
So in which case, we have to just do what Patanjali suggested. Dirgha Kala Nirantara.
Yes.
I mean, we have to keep on practicing.
Yes, exactly. That
and irrelevant of
to
Dirgha Kala. Okay.
Yeah, and just relish the seva, and the more we surrender, the more we actually do become happy. Remember, become free of fear. That's a byproduct. Well, it gives auspiciousness, one of the 6 characteristics of bhakti. So decide what we want, what our path is going to be. That's something I think we need to do. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Ian Sunny.
I don't know. I think Alex might want to jump in on what you guys were just talking about.
Okay, why don't you just go ahead, and then we'll get Alex now.
Oh, okay. Okay, so my clarification, so if Vishnu is the all God, and we're trying to use mantras and stuff to connect, but Krishna is used a lot, which is an entity of Vishnu, and then Bhagavan, Hari, Narayana. Where does that all lie? If I'm trying to read bhakti, where would my mind go to give over? In the Gita, it says, always be with Krishna.
Yeah.
But in here, it's saying be more with Bhagavan.
Yeah. Well, these are all. So Bhagavan and Ishvara, that's all in the Krishna tradition. All these terms refer to Krishna. Now, And so in the Krishna tradition, Krishna is not an incarnation of Vishnu. Krishna is the supreme cause of all causes, causal being. He's the ultimate kind of stop sign. And from Krishna, all the other forms are sustained, etc. And that's what makes the difference between the traditions, because in the Shaiva traditions, they would say Shiva is the ultimate causal being. And in the older Vaishnava traditions, Narayana is the older causal being. So that's sort of a sectarian thing, and the theologians will sort of have their point of view. But you know, so how for us, how do how does the mind become attracted? Through immersing it in the stories.
Right.
So you read the stories of Krishna, you read the stories of Vishnu, Narayana, you read the stories of Shiva, and just like I call it dating. In the mundane world, right? If you if you're seeking a partner, people date. Right, so they go out and they get to know someone, and I don't know, I've done it for decades, but let's just say you go out and you I imagine you talk and and you get to know somebody, so you're attracted to the okay, let's use the categories of bhakti, to the name. Bhakti would say the name, the form, the qualities, and the activities. So let's say in the mundane world, well, maybe we're not attracted to people's names so much, or you might think that's a cute name, but the form. So you want someone that you get attracted to a form, but that's surface level, and form changes. So then the qualities, the personalities, and so forth, and then the activities. What does the person do, and so forth. So as that's the case in the mundane world, so you're going to date, and then you date this one, and then that one, and that one, and then hopefully you find someone whose name, form, qualities, and activities are sufficient that you think, okay, that's captured my heart, and that's going to be my beloved. So that's not a very good parallel, but maybe it'll work. So Bhagavan, it's like that. So we read the stories, we read about the bhaktas of that particular form, and we read the stories associated with that, and that's what and then the idea is it's transrational. You fall in love, you become attracted by specifically the name, but specifically the form, the qualities. So Shiva has his wonderful form, Krishna has his enchanting form, and of course then in the Krishna tradition you have these wonderful leelas of Krishna as a little child, and he's mischievous, and you become enchanted by that, or you don't, and then you might become enchanted by someone else. We have friends here who are lovers of Shiva, for example, and their heart belongs to Shiva. They might appreciate Krishna, and they see Krishna as their Shiva, and that's their Shiva, but in the form of Krishna. So they would connect everything to their beloved. That's how bhakti works. You see your beloved everywhere, and everything as a manifestation of your beloved, including the other forms of Ishvara. And that's all wonderful. And all of the traditions have their theologies, which will give your intellect something to sort of hang on to, so you don't think you're just taking some irresponsible leap into some mythological dogma. So they all have very sophisticated theologies that will sort of satisfy the intellect if you immerse the intellect in the theologies. But ultimately, it's transrational. And is it coming from us? I don't know. I quite like to think it's coming from Ishvara, actually, and that we open our hearts, and then Ishvara will come in whatever form Ishvara is going to come. And it might be through a teacher. Many of us, we found bhakti through just a guru figure that we just felt this being is absolutely pure and devoted. I want some of that. That's what I want. That's what I seek. So often it comes that way as well. So as for the names, they're all gonna. Bhagavan is usually used for Krishna and Vishnu, but I mean Shiva will also. His traditions will also call Shiva Bhagavan. Hari is only Krishna and Vishnu. Shiva would be Hara. So some names are specific, but otherwise don't be puzzled if you see the same name, because the names like Bhagavan and Ishvara are more like titles rather than actual names. Like the president, right. Like you have to say the president of the United States is a title, but then you could say something like, Biden is the personality. So the name like Ishvara is a title. It means the one with the most power. It's a title. And Bhagavan means the one with super excellent qualities. It's still a title. So therefore it can be used by by different. But then once you say Shiva, now there you are with that Bhagavan, that Ishvara now manifesting a particular form, nama rupa, nama rupa guna lila, name, form, qualities, and activities. So Krishna's name is Krishna and Vasudeva, and the form is beautiful blue, with lotus eyes and peacock feather and all of that. Qualities are the sweetness, and even within a tradition, some love Krishna as a baby, some love Krishna as a friend and a bit older, some love Krishna as a beloved. So even within a tradition, there are varieties of bhav. We remember bhav, the love, the mind gets captured even within a tradition. Like, for example, I have no attraction. I'm a Krishna Bhakta, but I'm not particularly attracted to Gopi Krishna. That's just not my thing. I like Krishna with his little cowherd boy friends. That's my bhav. So even within a tradition, there's that. But don't be confused by all the different names. And everyone lays claim to being the highest Brahman. Everyone lays claim to be, and why let them all be true? Let them all be true. For you fall in love with your beloved, that your beloved is going to be the ultimate, the absolute, and just like a mother with a kid, right? All the mothers think their baby is the best baby in the playground. Everybody.
So when we're turning ourselves over to bhakti, to love the almighty whatever, it doesn't really matter if I'm focusing on Vishnu or Krishna, or like, because Krishna is kind of, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yes,
gotcha.
but wait, but the traditions would say when you fall in love, you are falling in love with very specific name, form, and quality. It's not some abstract, it's not an abstract something beyond all of that, because then that becomes impersonal. Then it's not a personal love. Then it's just sort of love for some abstract, then you can't even define it. What is that? That's it. So love is, when we're talking about bhakti, all these sort of, all of the traditional bhakti traditions are all very specifically focused on a form with a name, with qualities, with activities, all of them. In the tradition, perfect. I know there's lots of modern mishmash, this and that. I'm talking about centuries old traditional bhakti systems in India. Yeah, you're not trying to go beyond that to some abstract love in some kind of generic impersonal way, because love is something very personal and specific and clearly defined, and between two we fall in love with name, form, quality, lila.
Right.
Fall in love with. It's not falling in love with the idea of love. I don't even know how that would work. I mean, that sounds good, but it doesn't actually. How would that even work?
Right. But like in the Gita, he says, Krishna, give yourself over to me, do everything for me. Where then, like Bhaktavan, which now I understand is a title, but still represents Krishna. Like it can represent Shiva also.
It can do, yeah. Krishna's claiming that title and all of that in the Gita, and Shiva will claim it in the Shiva Purana and the Shiva text. But it's personal. That the main point that I we'll move on to someone else. But the one parting point: bhakti is personal. Personal. So it's connected to a personal name, form, qualities, and activities of one of these personal manifestation of that they're all eternal expressions of Bhagavan. There's nothing beyond it. There's no higher something that from which they emanate and manifest. Not like that. Not in this tradition. Maybe in some traditions, not in this one. Alex.
Yeah. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Sham. Jai. Where's Mom? Are you at home?
Guruji Iyengar. I'm at home, yes.
Okay. Nice to see you, Alex. Alex is an old friend of mine, by the way.
So,
give Mom my regard. Give Mom my namaskar.
I'm wondering about. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm I'm wondering about Guruji Iyengar. Is he on the kitten side or the monkey side?
I don't know it. So what a great question. Ask Prashant. Do you have a connection with Prashant?
Yes, I could get a connection to Prashant.
Yeah, ask him. And the other person, there's someone that's doing did her MA thesis on the Vaishnavism of Guruji, and that's she did her thesis in GMU in Berkeley. What's her name? It'll come to me. But anyway, if you have access to Prashant, I'd really like to know the answer to that.
Okay, and can you say just a little bit more about that difference?
I don't think I know a lot more about it, Alex. Other than one is that one is complete and utterly dependence on God. One isn't thinking that my practices are somehow contributing to that. It's much more a sense of utter and complete helplessness, and the other is that, but with more of a measure of I have on my side, I've got to do my bit as well. I don't know much more than that. That's the best I can do. But if you find out more, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Alex. Jai Siddharthi. We'll go with Adesh. Shiva, you can email me or something, because you and I, have a long-standing relationship.
Sure.
I want to give everyone a chance, and we got to do.
Sure, Edwin.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I don't mean to
I don't mind.
connect you, but you have access to me in a way that others don't. Okay, so let's have Adesh.
Krishna, Professor, I have one question.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned in the text that we were just reading, it says that we should stay immersed in the thought of God, and we live in the world, we do activities in the world.
Yeah.
All of us have professions probably, and I'm looking for a sort of practical suggestion on how to stay in the thought of God while I'm sort of, doing my thing in the world and doing all of those things. So I guess a practice, so to speak.
Adesh, can we put that on hold for 3 or 4 weeks, because we're now going to read the 64 practices, which are precisely methods of how to absorb the mind in God by means of these 64 practices. So let's have a look at those, and then see what we think of those, and then raise that again at the end. And if you still feel, well, that's not practical, or that sort of doesn't really work for you, if you have to go out 9 to 5, let's see what they say, and then revisit that question. Would that be all right?
Yes, that sounds
okay.
Great. But do I get another question though?
Yes, and then we'll take Matthew's question, and then we will have kirtan.
Okay,
sorry, Edwin, did you mean Christine Bell?
Yes, Christine Bell, Alex, Christine Bell. She did an MA on Guruji's Vaishnava. She was very, very interested in kind of excavating that part of Guruji's tradition, which, didn't really get transmitted in a very orthodox Sri Vaishnava sort of way in his books. It's sort of, there. Clearly, it's highly devotional, his books, but not in the sort of classic Sri Vaishnava mode. So Christine Bell, do you know her, Alex? Well, anyway, we can hunt her down. I probably have, Alex, if you email.
I'll look for her.
Well, I actually probably, if you email me, I may have her email, in which case I'll send it to you. Adesh, yeah.
So in the Advaita Vedanta tradition, the goal of life is Jivan Mukti, as that's one of the selling points of Advaita Vedanta, is that the knowledge of Brahman, and that sort of liberates you from the suffering of samsara. And it's Jivan Mukti, so it happens right now in this life, and it's not post-mortem religion.
Well, there's a bit of a difference. There's a difference there. But go ahead. Some would say, but some would agree with that, but not everybody. Go on.
Right. So from what I've learned, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
So what is the view of Bhakti on it? Is Bhakti like the vision of God? Would that be the equivalent of Jivan Mukti? Or
vision of God, and then you, in this life, yes, you could have a vision of God, absolutely, And then the question is, and then when you die post-mortem, then you go to Vaikuntha and Goloka, and then you have you know, with a personalist realm within Brahman, where there's names, forms, the four things I just mentioned. There's infinite. Krishna has infinite forms, so does Shiva, so does Vishnu. It's not like there's one form for infinite number of bhaktas. Each gopi in the rasa dance had her own Krishna. Each gopi thought she was exclusively dancing with Krishna, and each had her own Krishna. So this is the unlimited nature of God's personal being. He can manifest a personal being for each of his bhaktas. So that's a personalist realm post-mortem. But if the question is before death, yes. But some schools say you can be a jñāna, you know, a jivan mukta in this life, but some would not. I think Shankara says you can. I'm not sure about Rāgānugā. I think he says the veil of Maya is always going to be a teeny little bit of veil. As long as you have the body and mind, you're still going to be. There's a book called Living Liberation, if you're interested in that. And it looks at about 10 different schools as to whether you can get liberation while living. So it's called Jivan Mukta. So yes, but the bhaktas would say, yes, you could have a vision of God, sure, while you're alive. So that it's not that you'd have to wait till death. Yeah.
Perfect. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew.
Hi.
Hi.
My question was really about terminology or there were the breakdown of sadhana bhakti, which relates to practice between Vaidhi and Rāgānugā.
Yeah.
And then there was also the division of sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti.
Yeah.
So my question is, it sounds to me that Rāgānugā bhakti, which is spontaneous and emotion, I guess, based, less tied to practice, is the same. Or how is it different from bhava bhakti and prema bhakti?
You know, that's a really good question. I'm not sure I have an answer right now. Can we read on and see whether the text, how the text deals with that? I had never thought of that.
Sure.
Yeah, it does sound like sadhana bhakti, because it's saying sadhana leads to bhava and then leads to prema. So, but then it says the sadhana is divided into Vaidhi. That's fair enough. But then Rāgānugā, one which should assume, is no longer under the category of sadhana. It should be under the category of bhava and prema, is what you're saying. I don't have an answer off the top of my head. Can we read on? I'm fairly sure we'll get an answer to that in the verses ahead. And it's a really good question. And it's a really good question. And I see exactly what you're saying, and it's such a good question. I don't have an answer to it. It does seem a little bit anomalous, but I have faith that Rūpa will resolve it. Let's see if he does. Can you make sure you keep that in mind, so that if we don't feel it's resolved, we can bring it up again and think about it a little bit more deeply once we finish this first quadrant?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
And just as a point of interest, by the way, the term siddha, which we're familiar with, is the past passive participle of sadhana. So if you do your sadhana is what you do, and siddha, just like you do yoga and you become yukta. The term yukta is used all over the place in the Gita. So what from doing yoga, you get to the state of yukta, absorption. And what do you get from sadhana? It's the same, it's a Sanskrit root sad. When you put it into the past passive participle, meaning you've attained that state, it becomes siddha. So siddha is the past passive participial form of the word of the root sad. So that's the goal of sadhana. You become a siddha, and of course, and that's going to mean a different thing in different traditions. Shiva, do you have a really quick question before we do kirtan?
It isn't that quick, Edwin. It also involved Jivan Mukta, but I'll get to you about it later.
Okay, excellent.
But Edwin, I have a quick question. Are you kitten or monkey, or you don't relate to those?
I would say that I'm a monkey. I feel like maybe that, I don't know if that's my ego, or I feel there's free will, and there needs to be, I'm a little bit hesitant. And I think, for me, the kitten would be a bit dangerous, because it would, you know, there might be a danger that would slide into a place of like not trying and not, you know, and just leaving it all up to Bhagavan, and that doesn't quite work for me. So I would be definitely a monkey. And plus I want to be a monkey in Goloka and still butter and play with Krishna. So I'll go with a monkey on all scores.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Cece, where is our Cece? Cecilia. And there's Joseph up there. Joseph, you want to be a monkey? What do you want to be, Joseph?
Edwin.
Yeah.
Blade of grass sounds pretty nice.
Blade of grass.
Edwin.
That's actually how the bhaktas think. They shouldn't be. They should be thinking, I'll be grateful to be a blade of grass because maybe Krishna will. Go ahead. What does a bhakta think, Joe?
Edwin, this is Alex.
Hopefully one day he'll step on me.
Exactly. Cecilia?
Yeah, I'm here.
Where? Okay. Do you? Let's get you highlighted. If you talk, you should come to the front of the thing, and then I can. There you are. Okay. Some of you have met Cecilia before. You're in Buenos Aires, Cecilia?
Yes, yes I am.
And has a wonderful voice, and she's agreed to sing for us. Thank you so much, Cecilia. Nice to see you. Can everybody mute? Can you? Okay, I'm gonna. Can everyone mute? Can you all mute yourselves, please? Otherwise, I'll have to. I'll look at Cece. If I mute everybody, can you get? That would mean you'd have to get out. Can you unmute yourself?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to mute everybody because otherwise, there's always someone who's not muted. Right now, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay. There.
Is that you? Where is that noise coming from?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there's a mic open still.
If everybody would just be kind enough, just to, I have unmuted, muted everybody, but for some reason there's some background noise. Just please all make sure you're muted. And welcome, Cecilia. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cece. Thank you, everybody. That was beautiful.